Okay, shall we begin now?
Uh,
I think,
I'm just trying to see if we are on live now or not. So,
okay.
give me a second.
Okay,
I think we are live now, Ankita.
okay, all right.
So,
Uh, I'll, I'll let's begin then. Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of our distinguished speakers, esteemed participants, and respected audience members. I am Ankita, and it is my privilege to open this scholarly gathering organized by Nath USA. Today's event continues the conversation initiated at the recent symposium held at the University of California, Davis, which explored the extraordinary life and enduring legacy of Professor Puran Singh, a mystique, thinker, and literary visionary. A brief word about Nath Pargas. Nath Pargas is a dedicated NGO committed to fostering academic discourse and promoting reflective research. Its work spans epistemological and aesthetic domains, engaging deeply with the conceptualization of Naam Shabd philosophy. Through its initiatives, Nath Pargas strives to cultivate a Shabd inspired knowledge system that enriches both education and consciousness. Before we proceed, let us briefly revisit the life of Professor Puran Singh, a pioneering voice in 20th century South Asian literature. His journey took him from the scientific corridors of Tokyo University to the vibrant circles of Indian revolutionaries devoted to the cause of independence. As a renowned scholar, Guru Bhagat Singh writes in Puran Singh, An Inflamed Heart, that he was a luminous soul, every particle of his being a burning torch. His life embodied a rare paradox, detached selflessness and passionate engagement. His capacity to dissolve the boundaries between the self and the other reflected both on the serenity of a sage and the lyricism of a lifelong seeker. In Professor Singh's own words, and I quote him here, he says, there is a lot of good in the human heart, but until the kindled social life of the religion and art of the beautiful sets it on fire and makes of every tiny particle a burning torch, what could mere individuals do? So, the story of his life, one of constant engagement with humanity, nature, culture, and the very elements of existence. So, as we begin today's program, I invite each one of you to enter this shared space of dialogue and inquiry, one in which we honor the profound legacy of Professor Puran Singh and seek to rekindle within ourselves the torch of scholarship and the creative spirit. So, thank you, each one of you, for joining us. Let us now embark together on this journey of reflection and inspiration. So, uh, to begin, it is my pleasure to welcome Anhat Pal Singh from University of California, Davis, to offer his opening remarks. So, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankitaji, for the warm introduction. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Could you please confirm if my screen is visible?
Yes, it is visible. Please go ahead.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Anhat Pal Singh. I'm a student at University of California, Davis. And today I'll be sharing a little bit about Professor Puran Singh Ji, his life and legacy. गुरबाणी दा फरमान है धन लिखारी नानका जिन नाम लिखाया सच. Professor Puran Singh was one such writer whom we can say Tan Likhari. On 25th of October at UC Davis, we made a humble effort to celebrate the life and legacy of Professor Puran Singh, who was truly a jewel of the Sikh Bauddhic Parampara. The symposium started off with a Shabad, Tan Likhari Nanka, Jin Naam Likhaya Sach, followed by a keynote address by Professor Kuldeep Singh Ji. He's the lecturer at the Department of Middle East and South Asia Studies, teaching Punjabi, followed by a talk from Harjot Kaur Ji, and followed by a violin performance from Sukhamrit Singh, who is a student at University of California, Berkeley. And then we had a great talk by Amandeep Singh Ji, followed by Professor Kenneth Perthes, who was the former provost of UC Davis. I was particularly inspired by this one great poem of Professor Puran Singh Ji, which we actually got imprinted on the hoodies, which you can see here. ਖਾੜ ਖਾੜ ਚੱਲਣ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੇਰੇ ਸੁਪਨਿਆਂ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਦਰਿਆ ਪਿਆਰ ਅੱਗ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਗੀ ਹੋਈ ਪਿਆਰਾ ਜਪ ਸਭ ਗਾਉਂਦੇ ਠੰਡੇ ਤੇ ਠਾਰਦੇ ਪਿਆਰ ਤੇ The many splendored personality of Puran Singh still beckons scholars to explore the extent of his vision in various fields. Professor Puran Singh wrote from a deep sense of conviction and his personal experience of the magic and mystique of the divine. The youth, however, still are not introduced to this literary genius. In fact, many of my friends were confused between Bhagat Puran Singh and Professor Puran Singh. Professor Puran Singh was born on 17th February 1881 in a small village, Salhad district, Abbottabad, now in Pakistan. After passing his FA examination in 1899 from DAV College, Lahore, he sailed for Japan in 1900 and joined as a special student of pharmaceutical chemistry in Tokyo University. He was sponsored by Bhagat Gokal Chand and the enlightened Sikh elite of Rawalpindi for higher studies in science and technology in Japan. Here you can see some pictures of Puran Singh as a student at Tokyo University. Professor Puran Singh sitting as a Bodhi Bhikkhu in Tokyo University. His meeting with Bhai Veer Singh Ji. Puran Singh was greatly influenced by Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, but the real inspiration came after his meeting with Bhai Veer Singh during the Sikh Educational Conference held at Sialkot in 1912. He records this event in his own words. ਉਸ ਸੁਭਾਗ ਘੜੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਦਰ ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਮਹਾਂਪੁਰਖ ਦੇ ਦੀਦਾਰ ਹੋਏ ਔਰ ਆਪ ਦੇ ਕਿਰਪਾ ਕਟਾਖਿਆਂ ਨਾਲ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਸਾਹਿਤ ਦਾ ਸਾਰਾ ਬੋਧ ਤੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਦੀ ਉਡਾਰੀ ਆਈ ਕਵਿਤਾ ਵੀ ਮਿਲੀ ਤੇ ਉਸੀ ਮਿਹਰ ਦੀ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਸੀ ਮਿੱਠੇ ਸਾਧ ਬਚਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਬੋਲੀ ਆਪ ਮੁਹਾਰੀ ਆਈ Here, sharing some more pictures from the symposium held at UC Davis on October 25th. While I was planning the event, my little sister asked, "What is this program?" And I told her who all will speak. And then she asked, "When is Professor Puran Singh going to speak?" That put me in a bit of a predicament. How do I explain this now? Professor Puran Singh will speak through his literary works, his poems. One of the inspiring ones goes like this. ਨਿੰਮੋ ਝੂਣ ਤੇਰੀ ਬਲਾ ਹੋਵੇ ਮਾਯੂਸ ਤੇਰੀ ਜੁੱਤੀ ਨਿਰਾਸ਼ ਤੇਰੇ ਵੈਰੀ ਹੋਣ ਚਸ਼ਮਾ ਫੁੱਟਿਆ ਤੂੰ ਹਮੇਸ਼ ਦੀ ਜਵਾਨੀ ਦਾ ਸਦਾ ਦੀ ਬਸੰਤ ਤੇਰੇ ਪ੍ਰਾਣ ਸੋਹਣਿਆ ਤੂੰ ਫੁੱਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਦੀ ਨਾ ਹਿੱਸਦਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਦੇ ਬਾਗ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਬ ਆਪਣੇ ਹੱਥੀਂ ਆਣ ਲਾਇਆ ਪਾਣੀ ਬੇਅੰਤ ਦਾ ਰਸ ਦੀਆਂ ਕਣੀਆਂ ਇਹ ਸ਼ਹਿਦ ਦੀਆਂ ਬੂੰਦਾਂ ਪੈਂਦੀਆਂ ਸੋਹਣਿਆ ਮੁੱਲ ਪਾ ਤੂੰ ਆਪਣਾ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ
Thank you so much, Anhat Pal Singh, for um, 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 very briefly informing the audience about the symposium held at UC Davis, and also very beautifully citing and reading from Professor Puran Singh's writings. As you said, a writer, a poet definitely speaks from his, through his writings. And thank you so much for, you know, taking us a bit even more closer to Professor Puran Singh today. So I really thank you for that. Thank you, Anhat Singh, for joining us today. With this, I invite the next speaker, our keynote speaker of the day, and it is with pleasure, it is with deep appreciation that I welcome Nilambari Ghaiji, the granddaughter of Professor Puran Singh, whose presence lends a living connection to the legacy of Professor Saab. So, ma'am, may I please invite you to deliver the keynote? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ankita, Anhat. Mm. You have to bear with me a little.
That's completely fine.
What you mentioned about youth and children strikes a vein because what my presentation is about is making things more relevant to the youth and embedding some of what Professor Puran Singh said and wrote and thought and believed in to bring it to the younger people and to look at history actually, because I firmly believe that we cannot move forward without looking at our past. So some of what I'm going to say is going to address that. And secondly, you asked who speaks, when does he speak, and how does he speak? Uh, in response to that, he spoke to me through my grandmother and through my parents, and they still speak with me. So here it goes. My Sat Sri Akal and good wishes to everyone present. I apologize for my voice. I am recovering from a bad cold. Thank you very much once again for inviting me to your webinar. At the outset, I would like to mention that you have spent many more years than I have on the life and works of Professor Puran Singh, and I am grateful to you for the dedication with which you have undertaken this research. What I am going to say is as much a tribute to your work as it is to the spirit and experience of my grandfather, whom I came to know through my parents and extended family. My overall goal today in this presentation and in the future is to address future generations. My children, nephews, and nieces often ask about Professor Puran Singh. I therefore prepared a brief write-up on his life and contribution that I am sharing with you. It is an overview of some of his achievements and is by no means complete. Most of you are familiar with this material, and I apologize for the repetition, but it provides an overall context. I have tried to focus on lesser known details as well as names because we tend to forget names. Another one of my goals is to acknowledge the contribution of women in Puran Singh's life. There is a beautiful account of what his mother meant to him in the introduction of the Sisters of the Spinning Wheel. My mother was known for her generosity and courage, he writes. She would serve her relatives for months and on occasion nurse the sick and the wounded. If she thought a certain thing was good and must be done, she did it in spite of the whole world's opposition. As for my grandmother, Maya Devi, a woman with no formal education, who supported her husband till the end and beyond, one has only to read her letters that never fail to inspire me. I am sorry that her Punjabi translation of Katha Sarit Sagar seems to have been lost. She was a pillar of strength for everyone who was fortunate enough to have known her. Her willpower was legendary. Here, I would like to mention my cousin Gunita Kapoor, Puran Singh's only other surviving grandchild, who spent far more time with my grandmother than I did. The biographical elements of what follows are based on Kirpal Singh Kasel's biography Rajhans. Historically, we are speaking of a period between the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. Things that we take today for granted were not yet in place. New and improved ways of refining sugar, making soap, glass, boot polish were evolving. This was the time when the first match factory was set up in Jammu, and interestingly by my maternal grandfather, Bulaki Ram Chopra. Speaking of Puran Singh, one might question how someone from such humble beginnings reached such heights. How could a young, eccentric boy born within the family of a Patwari in the village of Sylhet end up as such an eminent scientist, reader, leader, and spiritual thinker of his times? Perhaps it was because of his total commitment to everything that he did, whether it was lying on the grass completely aligned with nature, or riding on a stranger's horse into nowhere, or figuring out new and innovative ways of refining sugar, making soap, or extracting essential oils. He accomplished much, and yet, as for worldly wealth, he had none left for himself and his family. He had shared it all with nature and the beings of nature that he loved so much. He was a fakir till the very end, sharing his fakiri with his wife and friends and family. To come back to our question, what made him successful in whatever he did? It was perhaps his remarkable intelligence and excessive sensitivity that turned him sometimes into nothing more than the typical village simpleton, a gullible being easily led by others into doing whatever they wanted him to do. Had it not been for his mother, sorry, had it not been for his mother Parma Devi, who identified with the tiny spark in his soul that had the power to ignite passionate fires in the hearts of others, Puran Singh might not have survived. His genius would certainly never have surfaced. Parma Devi could do the impossible. She could withstand the caustic nature of her husband Kartar Singh and could take on the endless complaints and taunts of her narrow-minded biradari to do what was best for her son. She believed in him implicitly, and what is even better, made him believe in himself. Although illiterate, she was the best educator in today's terms. Instinctively, she understood the essence of what we consider to be the best in education. While at the Anglo Middle School in Haripur, she was concerned that the headmaster was trying to convert his students to Christianity. She expressed this concern to Puran, who was close to the headmaster's son, Albert. She told her son not to go over to the headmaster's home, to which Puran replied, "Albert is my friend. He comes to our home and eats here. I go to his home and eat with him. What is so wrong with that?" Parma Devi gave in, and in giving up, allowed her son to acquire the learning that Albert and his father could provide. Albert and Puran remained friends right through the mission high school in Rawalpindi. This was again a unique step taken by the family, for despite their limited funds and resources, they moved from Haripur to Rawalpindi to ensure that Puran's quality education could continue without interruption. These schools were where Puran Singh's intellectual foundation was laid. They nurtured his enthusiasm for reading in candlelight until late at night, and very quietly, his family, led by the spirit of his mother, provided him with the freedom to learn for the sake of learning. In 1897, his family once again somehow found the resources to send him to the well-known DAV College, Lahore, for further education. The institution at the time was known for its professors, who were modern thinkers, while at the same time deeply committed to nationalism and very much against blind imitation of Western thinking. This is where Puran Singh acquired his formal knowledge of chemistry, mathematics, science, Sanskrit, and English. I understand that there is going to be a presentation later in this webinar on Thundering Dawn. I'm looking forward to it. It was Puran Singh's earliest work in English that allows us to observe the development of his language skills from 1904 to the 1920s. I am always amazed by how he learned to function in Japanese and German in addition to the other languages he knew. It was thanks to Bhagat Gokul Chand, who encouraged the Biradari in Rawalpindi to sponsor Puran Singh's education in Japan, where he went to learn glassworks. Puran had not yet graduated, and his family was worried and concerned, but Puran was adamant and had his way. His mother, in her usual unique manner, asked her daughters to shower all their love on him and make the last few days of his stay so full of love and happiness that he would be compelled to revisit them in his mind. This is again another example of positive reinforcement in parenting and education that we follow today. When Puran Singh returned from Japan, Bhagat Ishwar Das invited him to give seminars on science in Lahore. He set up simple furnaces to produce fennel, caram, and essential oils from citrus and fruits, fennel, saunf, and caram ajwain. While at Roorkee Engineering College, Khudadad advised Puran Singh to present seminars at the Industrial Conference in Benares. Puran Singh's scientific presentations were received enthusiastically, something that motivated him further into the field. He was, incidentally, proud of the boot polish he had made and the mustard oil that he refined to make it colorless and odorless. Rai Bahadur Brishandas, a railway officer, impressed by Puran's talent, felt that he could do much more than producing small items. He arranged for him to become the principal of Victoria Diamond Jubilee Technical Institute. His salary at the time was rupees 120 per month. Next, it was Seth Jyoti Swarup, a follower of Swami Ram Tirath, who gave a break to Puran Singh. He helped him start a large soap factory at Doiwala. I understand that Doiwala, about 12 kilometers away from Dehradun, was beautiful in those days. The forests were so thick that one could not see the sun below the sal and the sandal trees. Then came the invitation to join the prestigious position of a professor at Dehradun's Forest Research Institute. It was difficult to let such an opportunity pass by. It was here that he wrote many research papers and produced industrial chemicals. He started Rosha grass oil on his farm at Doiwala and painstakingly removed foul-smelling Sophia plants from Motia, from which the oil was extracted. His contribution is described in the medal awarded to him. This is a translation. From 1906 to 1909, the true foundation of chemical science was laid by the principal branch officer, Sardar Puran Singh, who is also known as a famous Punjabi poet. Due to his hard work, India has gained an international reputation as being one of the leading countries in the field of industrial chemistry. The standards set by the Institute during those times still form the basis of this department. In 1919, he started working for the Raja of Gwalior, where he planted rosha grass and safeda trees. He started the Scindia Chemical Works. Later, he worked at the Surya sugar factory in Sardarnagar, a town in the district of Gorakhpur, UP, as a scientific advisor with Sundar Singh Majithia. Over there, he discovered how to refine sugar without processing it through carbon found in bones. This was patented under the name of Rang Cup. Puran Singh did this without a laboratory and without the help of research papers. Finally, with help from a few friends and through his own efforts, he was able to lease 16 murabba of land in Jaramwala Tehsil.
That is why he said, Asa Mari Nirasa.
I'm sorry, Arvinder, please mute yourself.
This Asa of life.
Arvinder, please
Is this
mute.
okay?
Yes, ma'am. Please continue.
Okay. Finally, with help from a few friends and through his own efforts, he was able to lease 16 murabba of land in Jaramwala. This is where he spent his time and where he felt at peace. It was in a way a coming home to his early beginnings and to surroundings where he felt in union with nature and its creator. He took nothing from the world and gave much to it. He was a man who thought beyond his time, someone whose words must not be forgotten, especially during these times when divisive sectarianism and a general lack of humanity seem to be defining our world. As postscript, I have often thought of ways in which to embed Puran Singh's work into history and social studies programs in high schools. A few years ago, I prepared a teaching module for grades 7 to 12 based on 3 of his works, Sisters of the Spinning Wheel, Unstrung Beads, and the Spirit of Oriental Poetry. This module encourages teachers and students to visit our shared heritage in a Western environment removed from national geographical and political boundaries. It provides an opportunity to explore the region of Punjab as it used to be and to understand the shared history of people who speak the same language and share the same cuisine, traditions, and culture. The module achieves this through an introduction to the works of Puran Singh, a pluralist thinker, scientist, and writer who well understood the range of the Eastern mind from the riverbeds and fields of Punjabi villages to legends from the Hindu Kush mountains and the silence of the Japanese tea masters. I am not going to pursue this with school boards, but as a document, it might be of interest to educators. Thank you again for inviting me and for your interest in my grandfather. Please let me know of any factual errors that might have appeared in my presentation. My apologies for any such errors, and thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you for the symposium and the webinar.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing such a heartfelt and enlightening keynote address. Your reflections, drawn deeply from your own personal experiences, and specifically your dedication to the youth, the future generations, have brought to life many lesser known facets, definitely about the life of Professor Puran Singh. Um, uh, I would also like I hope I remember it correctly, but I remember reading that how since we are talking about the influence of the mother, the presence of the mother in his life, so I remember that uh, like she would keep a dog and a parrot, and to give that feel of nearness to birds and animals to children, she would keep pets at home, and she would make sure to take the children crossroads or to the rooftop and show them the new moon every time. So I mean, the fact that his mother would keep pets and show the new moon to the children to keep them close to nature, it definitely reflects a nurturing and conscious effort to cultivate a deep connection with the natural world from an early age. And I mean, this practice embodies an appreciation for the rhythms of life and environment, and fostering wonder, curiosity that we definitely see in the writings of Professor Sahib. And as you said, an effort to keep the legacy. I am very confident that the name of Professor Puran Singh will resonate through eternity, inspiring countless generations to come. So I thank you very much for your presence today. Thank you so much. Uh, okay, so now it is my pleasure to invite the speakers. So we have three speakers with us today. And after that, we'll have a quick question answer round. So if any audience has any questions, I request you to please either post it in the comment box, or we can have a quick question answer round, after all the three presentations. So now it is my pleasure to invite Harjot Kaur, an educationist and convener of Nath Pragas USA, and a distinguished scholar in Sikh literature. Harjot Kaur has devoted significant efforts in bringing forth rare manuscripts, including her maiden work, comprised of editing and introducing a rare translation of Pai Singh's Sundari and Professor Puran Singh's Bhagirath, published nearly a century after its composition. Believing that the intrinsic value of literary texts must be continuously re examined across generations, she explores how Shabad aesthetics dynamically manifest in lived experiences. And today she will present her talk titled Epistemic Access to Bhagirath, a Hermeneutical Reflection. So please join me in welcoming Harjot Kaur. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ankita, for the wonderful introduction. I'd first like to share my screen. If you could please confirm if you're able to see the screen.
Yeah, we can see your screen. It's visible.
Okay. I have to turn on the video.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hopefully. All right.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Ankita. Thank you, everyone. Respected keynote speaker, honored speakers, and thoughtful members of the audience. It's my privilege and pleasure to be amongst you today. And the topic of my discussion today is epistemic access to Bhagirath, a hermeneutical reflection. But before I delve into the reflections, I'd like to anchor my talk in a theoretical backdrop. As I'm trying to go to the next slide. Let me see. Looks like there is some problem with the slideshow, so I'll just escape and try one more time. It seems to be. So, before we go into the reflections, like I was saying, I'd like to talk a little bit about the theoretical backdrop of Professor Puran Singh's works. Now, first is, the formation of the worldview. The process of our subjective world's construction, it involves an interplay of various forces and factors. And these forces and factors encompass our history, our tradition, our cultural competence, the populist and contemporary views of our times. All these factors and forces, they drive how we experience and engage with the world. The various ideological formations, in particular, that exist in our world, be they political ideologies or economic ideologies or identity-based ideologies, they bear deep impact on our lives. Now, when we talk about the worldview, there's a bit of distinction between how a layperson dispositions one's worldview versus how a scholar does it. A layperson formulates one's subjective worldview by passively flowing with life's stride. And passive life does not really actively participate in the process of history making. It doesn't necessarily engage beyond routine everyday living. And many a times, unfortunately, we see that a layperson does not fully avail his or her gift of human agency. But in contrast, a scholar's vision is something that permeates beneath the prima facie layers of life. The scholar locates the various life forms, and the scholar engages with the world by searching and locating the undercurrents of ideologies of one's time. And the scholar consciously forges a dialogue between them. And then he or she extracts knowledge from them, organizes the harvest of the age's knowledge into frameworks, and contributes to enhancing the epistemic framework of an age. So the way that the layperson engages with the world versus how a scholar engages with the world is significantly different, contrasting. There is in all ages, we've seen that there is a constant gap between existential life and the epistemic standards of life. One thing that surfaces is that it's important to note that, when the distance between the existential form of life and the knowledge that's produced from mundane life processes, when this distance gets widened, the existential life begins to get burdened under the weight of idealism. If I put this in other words, I'd say as the life and its existence get self-absorbed into the currents of life, it creates a state of tension with its gyan or episteme of life. And in this tension is created the fertile condition for idealistic, hyper-orthodox meanings to perpetuate. And this perpetuation begins to colonize the very life under a heavy weight. And when we see the genius, the contribution of a genius, a scholarly genius in particular, it's only a genius mind that can break this deadlock between idealism and existentialism. Because a genius produces conditions for creating a meaning of life, not only in its existence, but in its gyan and its knowledge. So there are two contributions that the genius makes simultaneously, producing conditions for creating a meaning of life in its existence, but also in its gyan and knowledge. And the genius is continuously experimenting. With such experimentation, the genius is able to uplift life, discovering its importance through an epistemic discourse. And that's where Professor Puran Singh is such an author of life, is such a scholarly, literary author of life who enters into life with an open mind and embraces its meaning with open arms. Indeed, this is a reason that religion for him is not an idealistic overshadow that burdens life under its weight. It's not that there are two worlds, one a world that is continuously being sought and a world that's continuously seeking. Rather, his religion, his way of life is embedded in life, where life to him is a subtle fragrance of flower that emancipates the garden of life, making it blossom from within itself. We see that his spirituality emanates from life itself, from within the flow of life. and the spirituality beats in the heart of life's existence itself. So in many ways, we see that, his interpretation of life, of his age, how the life is fluttering across the gap, the abyss between the two worlds of idealism and existentialism. He comes across as the Hermes between the two worlds, the Greek god who had access to both the worlds. He comes across as the Hermes between the two worlds, trying to bridge them through conceptual undercurrents in the picture that he casts in the Bhagirath novel. From a next submission standpoint, there is, for one, we see that Professor Puran Singh bridges this gap by dedicating his writing to the assertion of life spirit. He's a scholarly literary writer who's dedicated his writing to the assertion of life spirit, which otherwise many times goes underpronounced in the process of meaning production. Life has its living conditions, life has its struggles, its aspirations, its passions, its dejections, rebuttals, meek acceptances. There are hordes of begrudgings, there's hordes of forgivenesses. All of these living conditions don't find their voices accounted for in common accounts of history. And that's where Professor Puran Singh differs. He brings in a novel approach of actually making these life spirits assertions a part of meaning production. Now, when Western civilization tried to address the question of whether life has any other meaning which arises from other modes of knowledge production than history, the civilization resolved it by inventing sociology as an academic discipline. Now, we see that sociology has made a lot of contributions in deciphering the social fabrics of civilizations, but we do see that even though sociology's analytical focus remains in widespread discourse, it sometimes tends to overanalyze and even overly objectify many important means of knowledge production. Furthermore, we see that in seeking of meaning via Bhagirath as a scholarly genius, Professor Puran Singh's approach to scholarly literature is such that it percolates into the pace of life and it captures the pulsating life's meanings, its tales, its everyday's joys, its ideals, its moral, existential, or spiritual dilemmas. He's not shy of capturing these moral, existential, or spiritual dilemmas, even though many times we see that interaction of living forces is such that it does end up including contradictions and dilemmas, which will never resolve. But even then, in Professor Puran Singh's oeuvre or his worldview, we see that these contradictions, even though they're unresolved, they have a place in the world of meaning production. We see that the process of giving meaning to life, that's what Professor Puran Singh illustrates in his work Bhagirath, is that the process of giving meaning to life, it keeps dissolving in the patterns of daily life. And these meanings re-emerge afresh every moment. The meaning that active life excavates from the fountain of history changes and evolves. The meaning that such life constructs in history grows and reshapes itself dynamically. That's the beauty of Professor Puran Singh's work, Bhagirath, that it captures the flow and the dynamic life's flow, as well as the dynamic meanings that are being constructed via the flow of the life. We see that Professor Puran Singh suitors two worlds, and he transmigrates very fluidly from one culture to another, from one experience to another, from one language to another. And these movements are very fluid in nature. They aren't abrupt. It's like he sees a transparency between one experience to the other, one culture to the other, one language to the other, and he just flows through the tributaries and distributaries of that transparency. His mind undergoes such journeys dynamically. And then in his going through these journeys dynamically, through his work, he interconnects the lives of many a people with a common thread. and thereby the novel Bhagirath gets birthed. We see that in the medley of Bhagirath, we come across the lives of many a different genre of characters. We see an honest clerk and his wife who exemplify a sturdy ethos. We see a father and a daughter duo who've been displaced from their traditional settings and they are grappling with new model of living after they've been through religious reform movement participations. We see a married couple whose affections grow for a period of time only to dwindle down later and causing a ruptured marriage. We see a reinitiated housewife who traverses spiritual path with conviction and passion. We see a mountain-dwelling ascetic home dweller whose seekings and wants from life are few and far between. We see a household or households in an industrial town that's been recently set up and is grappling with the advent of capitalism. We see nationalists impassioned in fervor with increasing momentum of Indian national movement. So we have a medley of characters through whose lives Professor Puran Singh is excavating meaning through their life's fluidity. And as he's doing so, he's weaving the secular world and the religious faith-based worlds. By immersing himself in both these worlds, he's able to bring them closer through the unfolding stories of the novel's characters. As some of the characters shed their former seekings and instead turn their sights to new horizons, the language of eternal pursuits transforms into universal calling. Because these pursuits, these seekings to new horizons and seeking new meanings, this is an eternal phenomena. It's a universal phenomena. And as we see this happen in the novel, we see that there's a formation of a universal language. Professor Puran Singh lays this universal language, and this universal language speaks to all. It's understood by all. And in doing so, Professor Puran Singh's idiom, his particular style of evoking the universal calling, we see resonates deeply with many a reader. My next submission is that there is an thematic exploration that we see Professor Puran Singh does on many occasions. He hones in on universal themes in the novel of individual freedom, moral pluralism, nationalism, scientific progress, ascetic life, aspiration towards elitism, pseudo-intellectualism, and many more themes he hones in on. And he approaches the timeless human seekings of evading through sin, of seeking emancipation and seeking redemption. These are timeless human seekings. And in his doing so, Bhagirath doesn't remain a sick novel. Rather, it morphs into an important literary novel of the whole age, of a whole age. For example, we see that, the theme of personalized nationalism that speaks through two characters in the novel named RB and Ramlal. We see that RB authors her version of national anthem in the book, Bhagirath. We see that her ferocious spirit, as she narrates the national anthem, the spirit, it suitors the whole garment of India into matronly wrap, and it awakens the spirit of her audience. And her personalized nationalism accords primacy, but not to the notion of allegiance based on geography or national origin, but her according of primacy is to the flagship of a boundaryless people that are united under a spiritual banner. Ramlal, he's a reputed editor in the leading daily newspaper of Lahore, and he writes copiously for the newspaper. His version of personalized nationalism tends to be creating those elitist writings to awaken the identity of his countrymen and women, with the nation being the mobilizer to exercise political autonomy. So we see at least two versions of personalized nationalism being evinced through these two characters. Now, Professor Puran Singh's nationalism is spiritual in nature, yet it's pluralistic in content. He folds in religious pluralism, cultural pluralism, epistemic pluralism, very organically to form and live his idea of nationalism. Let's move on to the next slide as we take this sense of nationalism that segues seamlessly into the essence of spiritual realization for Puran Singh, Professor Puran Singh. We see that he subtly suggests in Bhagirath two ways in which one connects with the divine or one realizes one's religious experience: the normative and the experiential. The normative experiencing of or realization of religious experiences through a standardized way marked by routinized practices, norms, and a prescriptive way of following religion. Whereas the experiential way of experiencing religion is by experiencing the divine in and around oneself, while one is fully engaged in the flow of life, treating the whole existence as being under a canopy. We see that the saint figures in the novel, in Bhagirath, some of them being Saint of Satluj, Sardar Darbari Singh, Lara, Bhagirath, they plow their wholeness within the world they live in, and they don't attempt to escape it. They till the soil of human experience to grow compassion, insight, and grace. And they're not the saints who are seeking some transcendent world solely, but they're very much living in the life and contributing to it. And I just want to clarify that in my first submission, I'm not indicating at all that the first way, the normative way, is a limiting way to experience religion. But I'm simply stating that there's another way to experience religion in which the whole cosmos comes under the canopy of a divine grace. So as I move towards the closing of my talk, I'd like to say that one of the most significant contributions that Professor Puran Singh has made to the field of Sikh literary tradition is that of narrowing the gap between the idealized living and the existential living. That remains, in my view, one of the most significant contributions that he's made to the field of Sikh literary tradition, and not only Sikh literary tradition in the secular world as well. And Bhagirath is one of the most rich novels of his age, which includes diverse dimensions of life, such as it talks to the diverse dimensions of life, such as increasing temperament of nationalism, the social conditions of his age, the economic transformation, the impact of colonialism that it makes on native knowledge transformations, the impact of reform movement on the native subjectivity, historicization, and ideological underpinnings of an age, the construction of religious boundaries, and the landscapes of rural life of Punjab. So he suitors so many different dimensions into the creation of the life in Bhagirath. It's relatively simple and straightforward to perhaps engage in paramountly one or two of the ideological formations and see the world from their lenses, but it's quite a significant undertaking to see all these diverse dimensions interplay under the fabric of life and engage them in life and in meaning production. So I say that this is a unique contribution of his age to history. I use the word unique because not many literatures of his age have so vividly captured the organic and pulsating life form in such a living discourse. We see that Professor Puran Singh accords their due to life's patterns and dynamic interactions. He gives the patterns of the lives their due seating on the table in the episteme-making process by folding in life's dynamic interactions, contradictions, and dialectic realizations. He deals with a multitude of ideological formations in unison, as I was previously alluding to. He strikes a harmony between aesthetic experience and asceticism's experience. He enunciates how ascetic experience is being converted to aesthetic experience and how aesthetics nurtures the blossoming of the ascetic experience within. As a student of life, as I am, and perhaps as others are, who read the novel Bhagirath, will walk away with the paradoxical knowledge that while the novel has revealed a lot of life's understanding, that there's perpetually much more to be acquired. And novels such as Bhagirath don't just entertain, but they educate the various realms of our mind. And they offer epistemic access to lives that we have not yet lived, lives that we perhaps can't even imagine, emotions that we have not felt, emotions that we don't even know they exist, and most importantly, truths that we have not yet named or identified, let alone lived. With that, I'd like to conclude my talk. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that richly layered presentation. So your talk compellingly situated Professor Puran Singh within a living hermeneutical field where, as you said, meanings are not fixed, but continually they re-emerge in the flow of life itself. So thank you so much for also drawing our attention to how the scholastic genius of Professor Puran Singh refuses to containment. Always, as you talked about the pluralism, or how he embraces meaning with open arms, moving fluidly across languages, across cultures, across professions and intellectual traditions. So, thank you so much. It was definitely a very richly layered presentations, and also your rereading or reading of Bhagirath, shows us, the dynamism. Also, how you showed us how Professor Puran Singh speaks in a universal idiom that transcends all boundaries. So, thank you again so much for talking about these multiple hermeneutical lenses, which of course often intersect or compete, in our attempts to interpret him, and perhaps this tension in itself is what sustains the vitality of his thought. So thank you again for such a thoughtful and inspiring exploration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankita.
Next, we are privileged to hear from Gurchetan Singh, a researcher at Nath Pargas, Shri Amritsar, and one of the managing editors of esteemed journal Shabdarth. Mr. Singh has notably compiled and authored the Introduction to Thundering Dawn, a seminal English language journal first published in Tokyo, Japan, and subsequently in Lahore during colonial Punjab in the early 20th century. So, Thundering Dawn is distinguished for its profound Oriental wisdom, and it serves as a vital archival response, providing deep insight into Professor Puran Singh's formative philosophical ideas and his profound engagement with the culturally rich environment of his time. So now I invite Mr. Gurchetan Singh to present his talk and further illuminate on the history and impact of Thundering Dawn. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ankita. Am I audible?
You're audible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ankita. And thanks to all the honorable dignitaries present here, especially Ma'am Lambri Ghai and Anantpal Singh ji, and my friends and teachers sitting in the audience. And special thanks to the organizers for providing me a chance to present myself on Professor Puran Singh's work, the journal Thundering Dawn, which he edited and authored during his stay in Japan and later from Lahore. And, just allow me to start my talk. As Sri Aurobindo when he talked about the poetic creation, he outlined sublime details by distinguishing the source. Source means the inspiration, the vital force of creative beauty, and the transmitting outer consciousness of the poet. So these three essentials should be focused or concentrated on while we discuss someone, something, or you can say anything in the poetics. So, like that, a poet, a scholar, or a thinker, in his lasting image or sublime self, is a blend of his inspiration and his actualization. And when we are to analyze, we can say that the inspiration has more to say and more to bestow. And the actualization, though important, has its limits and hindrances in connection with the writer's subjectiveness or subjectivity, his body and mind, etc. So, today we are here to have a talk on Professor Puran Singh, who was a poet, a mystic, a scientist, and a philosopher who felt the truth in his heart and through his heart, in fact, who did not write but actually delivered the words in divine resonance. If we try to figure out his inspiration, at least through the content of Thundering Dawn, his inspiration was living dynamics of subtler being, the ceaseless motion of the divine within, and you can say the mystic vitality of existence. And let's talk about his manifestation and actualization, which is sometimes seems more lively and more important, as you know, it is said by Harbhajan Singh that his form is the content. So his actualization was his complete submission and let flow his being in the devotional surrender, which ultimately nullifies the hindrances. That is why his text or words touch us so deep in the heart. In, as I have said earlier, that his form is the only content. The form only is the content, as Harbhajan Singh said. Though his transmitting outer consciousness, the category Shri Aurobindo brought us to think upon, is more active, as grounded more in emotions and consequently limits the form in a sense. Professor Jagdish Singh also highlighted his paradigm from Sabda philosophy as more closer to Surt Shabd in his foreword to the book Spirit of Oriental Poetry, which was published by Nath Pragas. So, Professor Puran Singh has written in all forms like poetry, plays, prose, stories, translations, critique. He has given lectures, written lectures, biography. He has done editing too. So, through touching all the literary forms, he was noticed and commented by almost all the authors, scholars in the Sikh world. The most important among those who actually underlined his uh, finer details, vitality, and presented critique are Dr. Jaswinder Singh from Patiala University, Dr. Gurpagat Singh, Dr. Balbir Singh, Atar Singh, Dr. Surinder Singh Noor, Veer Singh, and lastly, Professor Jagdish Singh and Amandeep Singh. In the book Spirit of Oriental Poetry, Amandeep Singh wrote introduction to the book, and Professor Jagdish Singh wrote forward to the book. You can also find Dr. Jaswinder Singh's lecture on, especially focusing on Thundering Dawn on YouTube, where he has given lots of details, rare details, which we cannot know otherwise. So Puran Singh is also, when we think about Professor Puran Singh, one of the thing which just we visualize and come across is some transformations in his life. Actually, transitions are important as they underline his inspiration and actualization again and again. But here we need to pause for a second and think again, because simpler minds will interpret these transformations in a different way, which won't be the correct one. So, in my sense, these transitions are not the changes in Puran's being. It's not shifts or shift in its crude sense, which usually is based on negation. Rather, it's illumination of real Puran through assimilations and exhaustions of subtler experiences and arising through those pure experience toward the more sublime and higher realms. So, with those words, I come to the topic in hand, the Thundering Dawn and the journal, and the days he spent in Japan during early stages in his life, and about the journal he edited. Before that, I would like to mention a incident which would, show some fundamentals in his being. When he went to Japan for higher studies in glassmaking, he swapped his studies with the fellow student Damodar Singh, just because he was reluctant to pursue his course in Germany language, which was mandatory for that course. So this incident tells something fundamental about the personality of our poet, which we can, talk about this later on or some other times. Anyhow, in Japan, he worked and came into contact with so many grand personalities who left a substantial impact on his being, including the very prominent transition through Swami Ram Tirath. His literary activities in Japan are more or less inspired by his love and submission towards Swamiji. The most important from those activities is the publication of the journal Thundering Dawn, which, with the favor of the organization Nath Prakash, I edited and introduced and published. Thundering Dawn was edited and even for larger part authored by Professor Puran Singh. It is a remarkable fusion of poetry, thought, and mystic experience that stands the union of Eastern traditions and the Western consciousness. Composed and edited during his stay in Japan, the journal embodies the unity between matter and spirit, science and faith, individuality and universality. It is not merely a literary periodical, but a cosmic document where the creative self, through the force of language and experience, attempts to articulate the rhythms of the being itself. The title Thundering Dawn captures the essence of its vision. Dawn, even I discussed this, the title in my introduction also. Dawn as the illumination of awareness and the thunder as the sound of awakening or assertion. The journal celebrates the moment when consciousness first meets its own reflection in existence. It is the experience that has broken through conventional boundaries and seeks to proclaim a way of the intercivilizational transparencies. The content of Thanjing Dawn declares man as Atma, as it says, the energy of energies, perfection of perfections, light of all lights, all in all. We come across the essays, the man, ecstasy, faith, and virtue and vice, each exploring a different dimension of selfhood. The man, the essay written in the journal, defines Atma as the animating principle within all forms of existence. The same energy that makes the rose fragrant, the lion roar, and the star evolve. The notion of Atma here transcends doctrinal confinements of any sorts and becomes a universal element of being, the spiritual energy underlying life's diversity. He challenges the authority of dogmatic institutionalization, declaring that man is independent. All religion are to show him. So, and the content of Thundering Dawn, man is in the center. Everything is about man and for man as a being, as a explorer. Religion in the pages of Thundering Dawn, is not a code or a ceremony, but a vision of the whole, a direct perception of the unity between body, mind, and the cosmos. In this sense, Thundering Dawn, you can see, revolves around the realized selves or individuals. Some thinkers or writers relate Thundering Dawn to national upliftment and the freedom movement in India, which Dr. Jaswinder Singh also mentioned in his lectures, that all their citations are seems to be without reading. However, this is, in my sense, this is true in a sense, but you need to change the sentence by removing national and India. In the journal, a nation is not a map, but a living organism of consciousness, not a race or religion, but a rhythm of being. Nationality for Puran Singh is sacred only when it is the flowering of the divine within, when its culture expresses the fragrance of the spirit. Similarly, freedom is to be a human in cosmic subtleness, free, loving, and realized. That is how Puran Singh sees and interprets freedom in Thundering Dawn, which is a universal interpretation. That was all I have to say about the Thundering Dawn, and we'll take. But before I leave, I want to just mention the structure of the journal. The structure itself mirrors the archetype of the consciousness working behind. The journal is mainly every journal. There are 7 issues, but unfortunately, one issue we could not find, and we have published 6 issues in a book form. So all the issues, they are divided into 4 parts. The first part is essays, the second part is editorial notes, the third part is poems, and the last part is wireless flashes. This fourfold design represents a journey from reflection to ecstasy. The essays articulate thought and emotions. The editorial notes clarify the ground more in moral and social insights. And the poems transmute those reflections into the creative principle, vital force. And the wireless flashes contains actually brief quotations from thinkers and the prophets across civilizations, which apparently expand the text into a universal dialogue and unfold the transparencies. So thus, Puran Singh construct a trans-historical chorus of exposures and experiences where all voices, all their proclamations assist in beings becoming. So that was all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Uh, Thank you, Gurchetan Singh ji, for that insightful presentation on Thundering Dawn and providing us a panoramic view of the journal and writings of Professor Puran Singh ji, from its structure to the issues and the themes that have been articulated within those writings. Thank you for also, very beautifully, you brought out how the journal embodies Professor Puran Singh's vision of universal human experience, while at the same time remaining rooted, in the personal, as you also talked about, his time in Japan, especially the encounter with Swami Ram Tirath, that offered valuable glimpses into the shaping of his literary and spiritual work. So, perhaps definitely a point to ponder for all of us, that what exactly balances this universality, within its cultural specificity. So, is it the transcendence that arises from going beyond, or the deepening within it? So thank you so much once again for that very beautiful and thoughtful contribution. Thank you. Um, okay, so this is now I invite the next and the last presenter for today's event, Mr. Amandeep Singh, who, following the footsteps of Professor Puran Singh ji, refuses to be contained within boundaries of profession or languages or streams of, studies. So he is the director of Natpragas USA, whose scholarly contributions, he has significantly advanced the discourse on Sikh political and spiritual thought. He's the author of Akal Takht, Revisiting Mirian Political Imagination, and has edited a comprehensive collection of essays on Akal Takht. He has authored multiple articles, which have research papers, which have been, published in national and international journals. Editor-in-chief of newsletter Makrand and one of the editors of journal Shabdarth. Mr. Singh today will now lead us through a profound inquiry titled The Search for the Eternal, Professor Puran Singh. So please join me in extending a warm welcome to Mr. Amandeep Singh. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ankita. Let me share my screen. Is this visible?
Yes, it is. It is visible.
Okay. So, thank you very much for everyone for joining this webinar. Thank you, Lambri Ghaiji and Gurchetan Singh, Harjot Kaur, Professor Jagdish Singh, and Ankita, and all other esteemed members of the community and scholars. This talk that I'm going to present today is very kind of, I'm trying to give a comprehensive view about how overall the literary journey of Professor Puran Singh. So what we find more interestingly in this talk uh, is his search for the eternal in that talk. So the and as I go further, this will become more clearer, and when we try to go delve deeper into this presentation. So my first submission is about the times in which Professor Puran Singh was working. So how was his time very central to his writings as well? So what were the different impacts that were coming through in his literary journey? So if we note it a little bit more closely, we can see that there was an impact of colonialism on the literary atmosphere in which Professor Puran Singh was writing. So, with the advent of colonialism, there was a shift from the traditional poetry, including Kissa, Kav, poetic history like that of Jangnama, mythology, etc. And these were basically the traditional ways of writing literary works, and it shifted from these kind of literary works towards more of novel writing, newspaper memoirs. So you see a lot of new newspapers that started coming up during that age, and then there was literary criticism and works on theology. So all those new ways of writing work and new ways of experiencing the knowledge tradition, it was actually emerging with the advent of colonialism. So it marked with the advent of reform movements, which include the Brahmo Samaj, the Arya Samaj, the Singh Sabha reform movement, etc., leading to a comprehensive study of religion. And there was more of a theological literature which was produced with the focus on religious differences, and comparative study of religion was actually very central during that period. And lots of polemical works were also coming during this phase. And the third the undercurrent of that age was also the rationalization and the secularization of the religious philosophy which was happening, and literature was undertaken as on modern Western lines. And you see the name of Muhammad Iqbal, Sri Aurobindo, Tagore, and Puran Singh. These were the main authors who were writing both in religion and in secular world. So these authors were engaging with their times in their worldly atmosphere, as well as trying to understand how religion and religious philosophies could emerge and could be made more relevant during this time period. So the conditions of weak connection with the realized religion were also there. So I will try to explore a little bit more on religion in my next slide. So there was the knowledge systems were like more of um, the if we observe it a little bit more closely, there were kind of four major influences that were working during that phase. The first was that of the colonialism itself. Then the second one was that of the reform movements. And the third one was, which is also very important, was especially in the Sikh atmosphere, was that of feudalization, which has gone to a point that there was excessive ritualization practiced, and leading to Gurdwara reform movement. And there was a kind of state of crisis in the religious atmosphere of Sikhs, and not only of Sikhs, but on overall the subcontinent was going through that phase. And the fourth influence was also that of the involving of the Indian national movement. So within these four different kind of influences, there were like that were continuously transforming the societies, and new practices were kind of emerging, and that were also equally problematic, and stagnating religion into a colonial framework of localized religion. And a lot of post-colonial literature has always highlighted this kind of uh, 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 schism, which was actually produced during that period, and hardening of the religious boundaries, and that the sense of universality was actually actually you know every particular was having its own universal with its own in its own way. So that transformation which was occurring during that period, Puran Singh was very much aware of this. So his mind was, taking note of all those influences that were coming of whether it's colonialism, reform movements, Indian nationalism, and the feudal uh, uh, tendencies of the society, which were actually had become very prevalent, especially in the century before the colonial advent. So he was very conscious about the historical meanings that were evolving during that time. So his literary, although it's also available from his literary works and his writings and his letters, but it's also the undercurrent of his literary works are actually giving that kind of message that he had a complete vision of all 360 degree of all the dynamics that were playing in his times. So for that, that was because of that there was a kind of a religious tension, or rather a tension between modernity and the traditionalism, which was primarily which was evolving at that time. So life's progress towards religious modernity introduced with the advent of colonialism. So it's not drawn from a complete abandonment of tradition in Puran Singh's works. So we don't see that he is abandoning tradition in that sense, but he builds the very foundation of the tradition, which was an ongoing process of human
आपण
condition.
घेतलं होतं ना
His
त्याचा रिप्लेसमेंट आलाय आता आलंय ना पैसे तर मिळ
Nitin, please, yeah, please continue.
so even the modernity has its own tradition. If we go a little bit closer to Puran Singh's works, so he was probably looking into that aspects as well. So he disavowing any modernity tradition or orthodox liberal binary. He was virulently resisting against the new literary atmosphere introduced with colonialism. So the literary atmosphere which was actually emerging during his phase was a very, very key and very central to his different writings that we can observe and intuitively make a sense of it. So after this, we need to understand how the mind of that author was actually getting shaped in different influences. So before we go into that, I would like to take a step back to understand what are the different dimensions of religion, what are the understandings of religion that continue to evolve. So with that step back, we can probably go a little bit closer to Puran Singh's works. So religion, I believe, is more of it's generally can be understood through two different dimensions. The one is the normative religion, which is like a prescribed idea of religion, which is a habituated form of religion. Like we get habituated to this religion. It's constituted through the practices, through institutions, through cultural activities, through socializational processes. So this is more of a normative religion that is basically passed on from one generation to another generation. So this is how we give that religion, and it's actually becomes a more of a constant undercurrent of societies. So it's more of the normative religion is more of a religion of masses, which is like more of a popular religion, mostly cultivated through festivals, through holy days and commemorations of holy days or something, or other related festivals which are associated with this religion. So it's more of a kind of popular religion. It creates habits of religion with standardized practices and rituals. So more of it's more of a like a standardization and rituals which are associated with that standardization. It involves routine socialization, including participation in everyday politics and activism. So most of the everyday politics and activism is actually evolving from this normative sense of religion. It's it creates a metaphysically solid sense of religion. So, in metaphysically, it's a very solid religion. So that's a religion as complete in itself. So that kind of religion is more of a normative religion, which is always prevalent in the social domain through and mostly cultivated through religio-cultural practices. But there is another sense of religion too, besides normative religion, which could be also defined as an existential or the intuitive religion, that the religion that is intuitively imbibed in living practices. So it's more of a living religion. It's like a breathing and embodied religion that is there in everyday life. So this religion experiences a cosmic sense of religion through fostering the creative and blossoming meaning of religion. That's how we understand the intuitive religion. It involves an active participation in life, in culture, in history, in knowledge, in art, in aesthetics, and it's like a religion of living relationships. So a religion as eternally evolving in itself. So it's that this sense of religion is like eternally evolving, and it's like brimming with infinite possibilities that continue to be drawn from within the religion. So sometimes remains critical of the standard practices. So it's this intuitive religion is many times, in fact, critical of the normative sense of religion. It's critical of the standard practices, viewing them as complacent and lacking rigor. So it uplifts the normative religion through its critique. So this critique is very central to actually uplifting the normative sense of religion, which is the popular kind of religion that we experience. So uh, Puran Singh actually belongs to this category of a religion in some sense. So he like and it's not something that he explicitly mentions, but can be actually this kind of understanding of religion can be drawn from his different works. For example, in Spirit of Orient Poetry, he mentions, "All are men, yet all are not men. There are flowers everywhere, but few have in them the perfume of the beloved." So this kind of sense of religion is very central to Puran Singh's work. So he is a he is a he his religion is more inclined towards a creative and intuitive sense of religion. The next point that I would want to discuss is how is Puran Singh's work actually a kind of fusion of life, tradition, religion, and imagination. So there is a this fusion is always there in his, and that can be experienced in different works, whether it's Spirit of Oriental Poetry, Spirit of the Sikh, or spirit-born people, and the Sisters of Spinning Wheel. These all his most of his works are kind of a fusion of culture, religion, life, tradition, imagination. All those things are continuously working in his work. So, in many ways, Puran Singh is a Sikh poet of the secular world. So he engages both in the secular world and trying to draw eternal meanings and uplift that secular world through this active engagement with religion. So his works contain literary books, which is like include and novels and poetry of diverse languages and traditions and articles and editorials and translations, etc. So the canvas of his works is very, very broad, and many times he follows a very non-conventional ways in his works. And I would say that it's a kind of unstructured style of writing. uh, the word unstructured that I'm using is not basically something which is more of a theoretical position, but more it's like uh, the way our modern minds have got accustomed to reading from one end to another end, the kind of flow of the stories. But his works are more of like when when I started reading for his first book, the Spirit Born People. For it took me quite some time to understand what was the author trying, where is the central message flowing. So to that effect, I'm saying that this is sometimes it's the conditioning of our modern minds which has made it kind of uh, very standardized way of looking at literature. So he actually transcends that kind of standardized way of experiencing literature. So that's the reason that his works are many times like folk stories. It will move on to poetry, and then it comes to an essay or a saki, and then hagiographic accounts, mythologies, literary passages, commentaries, exegesis, and shabads from Guru Granth Sahib. So this is like a complete amalgamation of many different ways of in which spirituality can travel through the through the rhythms of epistemic production. So this is a very, very unique way of writing, which we moderns would probably find it a little bit hard to get in, to engage with this. But once we do it, we can see that how he seamlessly flows, that the nature of all these accounts seamlessly flows in his works. So if he's writing a story and suddenly he will, maybe switch over to translate a poetry from some writer, and then some switcher to an essay. So that kind of, flowering and bringing all those different flowers in a collection together. It's something very unique style that he's practicing. So he's very relevant for post-colonial discourses in that sense, and that reflects the cultural embeddings and emotional makeup of the native society. That's how he becomes very, very relevant in that, and so it's kind of a little bit, unfortunate that we don't find his works very much discussed in post-colonial discourses. So he has a potential. Is a potential author of the future. So his oeuvre may emerge as a vital source for scholarly inquiries and infusing new life in post-colonial studies. And it represents a true voice of the colonized natives and melting down the solid boundaries of religious ideologies. So this is something post-colonial scholars are always continue to point towards, but at the same time they have for some reasons not engaged with those literary works which are that going beyond those ideological understandings of religion. So or identity politics of religions. Mere critique is one thing, but actually going into that literary atmosphere, to going and teasing out and carving out that native spirit, the native voice, is something which is yet to be seen in post-colonial studies. So the literary structure and knowledge construction, which is my next submission on this. So how does he makes a literary structure, and how does he construct the knowledge in his works? So the literature for Singh is not written on paper, but on readers' hearts. So that's his one very key message, that underlying message which is very much implicit within his works. So religious meaning for Singh is embedded in life. Harjot Kaur was also talking about it, and expressing the essence of that truth which is internal to life. So he's expressing that truth of life. So n- his unique literary structure overcomes divisions and binaries. So, like we have binaries like emotional, rational, nature, culture, inferior, other, and elite, superior, civilized, non-civilized. Most of the times, with the advent of the colonialism, the native literature was often classified as an not yet civilized literature. So he overcomes those kind of divisions He overgrows those hierarchies of knowledge. So this like subordination and domination of one kind of knowledge system over the other kind of knowledge system is definitely missing in his works, or kind of absorbed. That kind of duality is absorbed in his rhythmic flow of different expressions in his literary works. So he creates avenues for personal realization rather than subjects of analytical interpretation. So more of his works are more for self-realization and less for any analytical interpretations. He aims to evoke insights, emotions, or awareness rather than intellectual theories of for critical reviews. So I think there is a lesson for theorists today who are they talk about the psychologically or culturally embodied emotions, yet they continue to disregard the living relatability and the cross-cultural exchange of sensibilities consumed within and outside the spatial relationships. So this is an important lesson for critical theorists and scholars, especially of postmodern postcolonial theory. He presents mystical insights embarking upon the true quest for reality within the diverse forms. So, whatever the diverse forms of knowledge forms are there, his mystical insights are kind of embarking for reaching the reality of things, not just in its form. He tries to go under those forms and reach to the true reality, which is basically kind of a mystic way of experiencing the reality. He rejects the idea of identity, ideology, and religious boundaries which are drawn from comparative understanding of religion. So, in his book Spirit Born People, it's a very good quote that I find very interesting that he writes. He says, "Men fight like beasts for inflicting their religion on all others but themselves." So this is something very unique, thing that and a very appealing message or pluralistic message that he continues to give in his works. So it kind of dismantles the rigid orthodoxic way of experiencing or realizing religion. The next point that I wanted to make is that, and Hadur Kol has already given a very good detail about it. He is a poet of life. So this is one of his quotes. He says, "Kavita Jeevan Rang hai." So poetry is life's color. That's what he notes. And how does and he explains that too in his writing. He says he undertakes a two-way process of diffusion of life into knowledge, gyan, and unfolding of knowledge into life processes. So it's like both ways that it's a two-way process that he undertakes in the life and knowledge are so much intertwined. They give each other, they feed each other. Whatever life is making on its own, it turns into knowledge, and the knowledge actually uplifts that same life in response to its action. So poetry, and this is a quote for him, from Puran Singh. He says, "Poetry is like shedding of hands and feet and body as one is in a state of sleep." So he discusses the effect of poetry in putting many anxieties, the materialistic anxieties that we, harbor and perpetuate in our day-to-day living. So they are put to rest through poetry, and then it's slowing down the tireless chase of materialistic desires that we continue to harbor in our everyday living. So he celebrates life, culture, tradition, and nature to its fullest. So he remains excited about life and its vibrance in poetry. He notes, "I await a poetic sentence, one poetic sentence all my life, a sentence that sings a life involved, and the idiom that holds full power of the soul. This is a translation that I did from his work Khulle Lekh on page 8. So he is in his writings we can see how poetry is so much intertwined in life, how poetic life is unfolding in its true nature. So poetry in his works is presented as a taste of God. So it's a godly character. It's that embodies man in words and not merely in flesh and blood. So in poetry, as we can see, it's a more of a godly character for Puran Singh. Then I would want to give a little bit detail upon the spiritual experimentation that he did, which is available from his biographical accounts. So his journey across different traditions, his journey not only in spatial terms but in his spiritual journey. How does it take manifest itself? So he pursues a very fearless journey of experimentation of his being and of who he is. This is a point while I was discussing with Sukhwinder Singh. He was actually giving this kind of insight, and which I found it very interesting. So he and then wanted to share it with you. So he says that his experimentation of his being, who is it's very fearless, and it's dissolving the solid boundaries of religion while establishing fluid connection with that of one. So he undertakes an intra-religious journey from a normative sect to a Buddhist, and from a Buddhist to he becomes a sannyasi. Then he returns back to Sikhi with spiritually elevated a sense of religion. So therefore, like in throughout his journey, he's taking all the fragrance of different flowers with him, so spiritual flowers with him. So he considers Mirabai's poetry as a Sikh poetry, and and also he notes that the Sikh of Jesus loses it all to actually receive him. So basically, this kind of language is itself a very unique, very enriching, very opening in its sense. Like we don't use the term Sikh of Jesus. So, but he's experiencing it in such a wide cosmic sense that he can relate with that. He writes as if he's reading in his inner self. So that's how he's writing. His most of his works are kind of his self-reading, which continue to be there. And the religion for Puran Singh is a mental state of one's personal relationship with the divine. So he experiences and many times he notes while talking about diversity of religions. He whenever he engages with the topic of religious diversity, he notes that this is like it's a state of mind, and as the state of mind illuminates, it shapes the diverse expression of religious sensibilities into an eternal love for one's beloved. So in this sense, there is no, kind of confrontation or no religious identities or religious tensions. These are always like some may love Ram and some Jesus according to one's own spiritual journey, one's self spiritual journey. So that's how he is experiencing and he is living that embodied kind of religion. So poetry is for elevating. So with that sense of religion, he experiences poetry. So with that spiritual experiment, he engages in poetry. So poetry is kind of an an ultimate enunciation of that spiritual love. So his poetry is for elevating the human consciousness. So poetry forebears a saintly expression of human. He notes, as the poem blossom in consciousness, it incarnates itself as a saint. And in other words, a saint is a living embodiment of poetry for him, and spreading out into an infinite silence. So this is how he engages in life and in his spiritual experimentation. So, besides that, he has also given some literary criticisms, which are also important for to understand how he relates with the literature and the various forms of knowledge. So, for Singh, people who don't enjoy poetry become stones in their fateful eventuality. So, this is a very important point that, for many of the modern ways of living in which we get accustomed to a kind of very flat, linear material life. So, but for him, and which makes eventually or cuts off any connection with any abstract thought. But therefore he notes that he finds people with who do not have any sense of poetry in them as becoming hardened inside like that of stones. So he examines the mental state of unpoetic mind, and he notes human bodies that do not exist and that do not exit the wilderness like strikes of lightning are dead corpses that cannot bloom. So he's very critical and that's truly so because taking into consideration the poetic tradition which was also initiated by Guru Gobind Singh himself with 52 poets in his own court. So this is something that very central to his experiencing of life and religion and divinity and all the worldly characters that we continue to experience on our daily basis. So and then for writing about Shakespeare, he notes he's little critical about Shakespeare's writing. He notes that Shakespeare is like a photographer who takes pictures of the shady contours of dark human desires. So he is like more of a like a photographer who does that and remains secretly latent in human subconsciousness. So those secret desires, Shakespeare is able to tease that out and take some pictures and present it in his writing. So he rejects such writing as lacking true inspiration. So so Shakespeare is deep, but and to excavate what is hidden within one's subconscious, but he does not finds it inspiring for uplifting the human consciousness. He criticizes lazy and surface level niceness, which we usually get accustomed to as it's an undynamical goodness, like a fire without fuel. So he considers it like fire without fuel or the lazy niceness. So this is my second last slide, and I would quickly conclude after this. So diasporing ideas and knowledge. So what lessons does he have for diasporic communities, especially the people who have and since he had himself gone to Japan and learned things. So there is something which is very important within in his writings for diasporic communities. For Singh, migration is not merely for economic well-being or seeking professional opportunities or the so-called improvement of quality of life. It's a rather it gets rooted only through an open exchange and fresh circulation of ideas, sensibilities, cultures, arts, aesthetics, knowledge systems, experiences, and realizations. So he is very open for an open dialogue with the local or the migrated spaces, and he is all in for opening up those discourses. So he highlights the true sense of migration to diasporic communities through a living engagement with local traditions. So he is engaging with the local traditions entering a new space for Singh is not a mere physical movement, but blossoms of a new flower creating its own fragrance in a new environment. In that spirit, I believe that he had edited the journal Thundering Down that Gurchetan Singh has brought forward again for our uh, for our readings. So the colonial project, while worked towards fixing natives as particular other, so because he was a writer during the colonial period, and while during that phase that the particular other was more well, getting fixed during the colonial period to avoid any internal influence of colonizers society as uncivilized other. So most of the times the knowledge that was produced from within the native societies was always considered as uncivilized knowledge, uncivilized form of knowledge, and it is very much prevalent in 1835 minutes of education. So Puran Singh was uniquely open in creating literary dialogues with the most enlightened critical minds of diverse traditions, while bridging the gap produced by the colonial project. I say the word unique. So he was very unique in opening that creative literary dialogue of his age, which was like creating a and kind of he was bridging the gap produced with the colonial project. Why I say it's so unique was because of the range of his works. It was so diverse. He starts from Hafiz Okakuro Kakuzo. He is discussing Jaydev. He is discussing Iqbal. He is talking about Robert Burns, Shelley, Wordsworth, Anandacharya, Walt Whitman. He is engaging with all different diverse literary forms of his age, and that wide canvas of writing, especially available in his book Spirit of Oriental Poetry. It's very interesting to note that the way he's traveling from east to west and kind of traveling in his literary journey, going through all different literary forms is very very interesting, and it's it's very much available in his works, and that's why he is able to pinpoint the exact sentiment of many of the writers or exact nature of those writings. Like for example, for Carlyle, he wrote, "His pangs resemble that of Mirabai." So look, the way he is connecting both writers. And then for Victor Hugo, he says he's a writer who churns the ocean of modern European society. These very small, but very powerful comments are so much comprehensive, which gives capturing the sense of the writers. So Tolstoy, he says that he's spending his life in reforming the human beast, and these are the expressions of his wide canvas of relatability. So with that, all those understandings, I come to the conclusion of my talk here. So Puran Singh's works are in a way very multi-layered. They cause a multi-layered awakening that remain in a state of unity between knowledge and practice. So knowledge and practice are not two different aspects in his works. They remain in a state of unity in his works. And by incorporating symbols, mythologies, folk tales, sakhis, poetry, and shabad from Guru Granth Sahib, he creates a spiritual pause that dehistoricizes the colonial impact, which infused a sense of, and this colonial impact had infused a sense of identity crisis into religious imagination of natives. So most of that aspect of relating with the religion is emerging from that identity crisis that was actually embedded in the religious imagination of natives during the colonial period. So he has immense faith in life and reproducing the idea of Sikh life in everyday living praxis. So he had that kind of faith in life, and his works present Sikh character of infinite possibilities, and where being a Sikh is not a sectarian Sikh, but an evolving potentiality that opens the door of secular world into its higher meaning in religious realization. So the secular world is uplifted into its higher meaning in religious imagination. He shocks many saturated understandings of religion. So this is another quote from his work. He says, "Slaves only appreciate microscopic drops on lotus leaves. The freedmen play with the sea and the sun and the moon." This is one of the very good quotes. So then, in total, if I want to summarize his works, it's probably his realizing his Sikhi from an infinite height that he has achieved. So he endorses and his works, kind of relate with the Gurbani while I quote this, "Sabko meet hum apan pina, hum sabna ke sajan." So this is how I think he has kind of uh, taken forward the Sikh life into its true cosmic essence. And then thank you very much.
Uh, Thank you, sir, for skillfully tracing how Professor Puran Singh's thought engages with the colonial reshaping of literary consciousness and also the reformist rationalizations of his time. So I mean, your distinction between normative and intuitive religion was particularly insightful, revealing how Puran Singh's vision uplifts the inherent through the experiential, the institutional through the inner. So calling him a Sikh poet of the secular world, aptly, I think it aptly captures this synthesis. And your reading of this, as you said, his unstructured and genre transcending style as an organic expression of his mystical quest highlights the vastness and originality of his literary spirit. So, thank you so much for such an enriching and thought-provoking contribution. Thank you. And with this, we conclude the three talks planned for the evening. And now we move on to the next section of our event, in which I invite scholars to present their insights or present their comments on Professor Puran Singh or on the talks and presentations that we had today. And my first invitation goes to Professor Jaswinder Singh, Dr. Jaswinder Singh, Assistant Professor at Guru Gobind Singh Department of Religious Studies, Punjabi University, Patiala. Dr. Singh is the editor of two-volume Professor Puran Singh Ratnavali and has also edited essays on Guru Granth Sahib and anecdotes from Sikh history by Puran Singh. His scholarly contributions extend to numerous articles published in both national and international journals, reflecting his deep engagement with Sikh studies. So, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ankita. I think after the lectures of the Galaxy of Scholar of Purun Singh Studies, there's no room to comment. But for student, I would like to share one my observation. It's good to see Ma'am Nalamri Ghai and her talk, always good and insightful and like a river and blessings for new researchers. मेरा ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਕਿ ਜੋ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਅਸੀਂ 4 ਲੈਕਚਰ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਸੁਣੇ। ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਰੀਸੈਂਟ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੋਸਟ ਕਲੋਨੀਅਲ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਜੈਕਟ ਨੂੰ ਰੀਥਿੰਕ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਕੰਟੈਕਸਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਬਾਲ ਗੰਗਾਧਰ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵਰਕ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਅਕੈਡਮੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਪਿਛਲੇ 70-80 ਈਅਰਸ ਤੋਂ ਡਾਇਲੋਗ ਹੋਇਆ, ਤੇ ਉਸ ਡਾਇਲੋਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੰਟੀਨਿਊਸਲੀ ਕਈ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਬਾਇਸਸ ਵੀ ਦੇਖੇ। ਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਲੈਕਚਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਕੌਰ, ਗੁਰਚੇਤਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਤੇ ਸਰਦਾਰ ਅਮਨਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੋਰਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਡਿਲੀਵਰ ਕੀਤੇ, ਇਹ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਨਸਾਈਟਸ ਮਿਲਦੀਆਂ ਕਿ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਜੀਨੀਅਸ ਦੀ ਪਛਾਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਇਹ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਦੇ ਵਰਕ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਅਕੈਡਮੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਪਰ ਫਰੇਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਮੇਰਾ ਇੱਕ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਮੈਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸ਼ੇਅਰ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ, ਅਬਜ਼ਰਵੇਸ਼ਨ ਜਾਂ ਇਨਸਾਈਟਸ ਜਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਇੰਟਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਤੌਰ 'ਤੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਗਿਫਟ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ, ਤੇ ਪਰ ਉਹਦੀ ਕਾਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਟਾਈਮ ਤੇ ਸਪੇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਦੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਸ ਨੂੰ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਫੈਕਚੁਅਲ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਉਣਾ, ਉਹਦਾ ਮੈਥਡੋਲੋਜੀਕਲੀ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੁੱਟ ਕਰਨਾ, ਤੇ ਤੀਸਰੀ ਉਹਦੀ ਥਿਓਰੈਟੀਕਲ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਰੱਖਣੀ। ਤੇ ਇਹ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਜੀਨੀਅਸ ਦੀ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ 3 ਲੈਕਚਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਿਫਲੈਕਟ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਰੀਸੈਂਟ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾਦ ਪ੍ਰਗਾਸ ਨੇ ਪੁੱਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਵੇਂ ਡੇਟੇ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਂਦਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਪਰ ਮੈਥਡੋਲੋਜੀਕਲੀ ਫਰੇਮਵਰਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਤੇ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਥਿਓਰੈਟੀਕਲੀ ਜੋ ਅੰਗੇਜਮੈਂਟ ਹੈ ਵਰਲਡ ਦੀਆਂ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅੰਗੇਜ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਉਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਹੁਣ ਉਹ ਬਦਲ ਗਈ। ਇਹ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਬੜੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਚੀਜ਼ ਹੈ ਸਿੱਖਣ ਵਾਸਤੇ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਮੇਨ ਇਹ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਇੱਕ ਐਗਜ਼ਾਮਪਲ ਦੇ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀਆਂ ਲੈਟਰਸ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਬੜਾ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਇਨਸਾਈਟ ਦਿੰਦੀਆਂ ਕਿ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਲੈਟਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਜੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸ਼ੀਏਟ ਕਰੀਏ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ 3 ਪਾਰਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਣਦੀਆਂ, ਜਿਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਮੇਨ ਲੈਟਰਸ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਅਵੇਲੇਬਲ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਭਾਈ ਵੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੂੰ ਹੈ ਲਿਖੀਆਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ, ਦੂਸਰਾ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਤੇ ਫਰੈਂਡਸ ਨੂੰ ਹੈ, ਤੇ ਤੀਸਰਾ ਪਾਰਟ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਕਲੋਨੀਅਲ ਤੇ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸੰਬੰਧਿਤ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਲੈਟਰਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੜੇ ਬਰੀਕ ਇਸ਼ਾਰੇ ਪਏ ਹੋਏ ਆ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਡੈਸੀਫਰ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਲਿਟਰੇਚਰ ਦੀ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਅਕੈਡਮੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਧਾਰਨਾਵਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸਥਾਪਿਤ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਜੋ ਬਾਇਸਸ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਥਾਪਿਤ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਤੋਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਇਨਸਾਈਟਸ ਮਿਲਦੀਆਂ। ਇੱਕ ਇਨਸਾਈਟਸ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਲਿਖ ਨਹੀਂ ਸਕਿਆ, ਪਰ ਮੈਂ ਅਜੇ ਸ਼ੋਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਹਾਂ, ਪਰ ਫਿਰ ਵੀ ਮੈਂ ਉਸ ਲੈਟਰ ਬਾਰੇ ਸੋਚ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਲੈਟਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਮੋਹਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਨਾਂ 'ਤੇ ਹੈ, ਤੇ ਜੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫੈਕਟ ਨੂੰ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਮੋਹਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦਾ ਪੋਇਟ ਹੈ, ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਮੋਹਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਾਵੇ ਪੱਤਰ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਫੇਮਸ ਕਿਤਾਬ ਹੈ, ਤੇ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੀ ਅਰਲੀ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਉਰਦੂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਿਖ ਰਿਹਾ, ਤੇ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਇਹ ਲੈਟਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਤੇਰੀ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੈ, ਜਾਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਗੁਰਮੁਖੀ ਸਕ੍ਰਿਪਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗ ਦਾ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਕੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਲੈਟਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਪਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ। ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਸਰਦਾਰ ਅਮਨਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੱਸ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਸੈਕੂਲਰਿਜ਼ਮ ਤੇ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ ਦੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨਿਊ ਡੈਫੀਨੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਬਣਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਇੱਕ ਲਾਈਨ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਮੈਂ ਪੜ੍ਹਨੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਪੋਸਟ ਸਕ੍ਰਿਪਟ ਦੇ ਤੌਰ 'ਤੇ ਉਹਨੇ ਲਿਖੀ, ਲੈਟਰ ਦੇ ਐਂਡ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਉਹ ਮੈਂਸ਼ਨ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਲਾਈਨ, ਕੋਟ, ਬਾਈ the way there is no poetry which is not religion and there is no religion which is not ਟਰੂਐਸਟ ਐਂਡ ਹਾਈਐਸਟ ਪੋਇਟਰੀ। ਇਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਪੋਇਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਕਾਵਿ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਲਾਈਨ ਹੈ। ਅਤੇ ਜੇਕਰ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਇਨਸਾਈਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਭਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ ਤੇ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੋਰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵਿਸਤਾਰ ਹੋਣ ਦੀਆਂ ਪੋਸੀਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਪਈਆਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਬੜਾ ਲੰਮਾ ਸਮਾਂ ਲਗਭਗ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਗੁਰਚੇਤਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੋਰਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਇਸ਼ਾਰਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ 7-8 ਦਹਾਕੇ 9 ਦਹਾਕਿਆਂ ਤੱਕ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗਸ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਪਈਆਂ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਬਾਵਜੂਦ ਜਾਂ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਬਾਵਜੂਦ ਵੀ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ। ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਸਾਡਾ ਇੱਕ ਕਲਚਰਲ ਅਤੇ ਅਕੈਡਮਿਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬਾਈਸਸ ਰਿਹਾ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ, ਸਾਡੇ ਲੈਕਚਰ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆ ਇਹ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਓਪਨ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਧਰਤੀ ਦੇ ਜੀਨੀਅਸ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਜੋ ਵਰਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਡਿਊਸ ਕੀਤੇ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਕੰਟੈਂਪਰੇਰੀ ਥਾਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਡਿਫਾਈਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਇਸਟੈਬਲਿਸ਼ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਇਹ ਲੈਕਚਰ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਇਨਸਾਈਟਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੰਸਪਾਇਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਅਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਥੈਂਕਫੁਲ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਓਪਨ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਟ ਕੀਤਾ। ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਵੈਰੀ ਮਚ।
Thank you so much, sir. Definitely, this event today, introduces the readers to the vast horizon of engagements, theoretical engagements, and re-engagements that the works provide us with. And also, thank you for introducing to us the letters. Letting us know also about the letters of Professor Puran Singh. Thank you so much. And now I invite the next speaker, or Dr. Sukhwinder Singh. Dr. Sukhwinder Singh is from Department of Religious Studies at Punjab University, Chandigarh. He has edited 2 significant works on Sikh studies and authored multiple papers. His current research focuses on historical and intellectual development of Sikh thought and philosophy. Additionally, Dr. Singh is also one of the editors of the journal Shabdat. So, yes, over to you, sir.
ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ, ਇਹਨੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਬਾਰੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਐਸਪੈਕਟਸ ਸਾਡੇ ਧਿਆਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਿਆਂਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਅੰਤਰਦ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟੀਆਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਇਸ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ ਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਪੈਦਾ ਹੋਈਆਂ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਫਰਦਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਡਿਪਾਰਟਮੈਂਟ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਲਿਟਰੇਰੀ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਖੁਜਾਰਥੀ ਆ, ਉਹ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੇ ਅੱਗੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਡਮ ਨੀਲਾਂਬਰੀ ਕਈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਪਰਸਨਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਰੈਫਰੈਂਸਿਸ ਲਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਕ ਮੈਂਬਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਰੈਫਰੈਂਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ। ਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਕੁ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ, ਉਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਉਹਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਐਨੈਕਡੋਟ ਛਪ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਜੀਵਨੀਆਂ ਛਪ ਚੁੱਕੀਆਂ, ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਰੈਫਰੈਂਸ 'ਚ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਅਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨਵੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਵੀ ਸੰਭਾਵਨਾਵਾਂ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀਆਂ, ਸੋ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਕ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜ ਕੇ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਅੱਗੇ ਵਧਾਈ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਜੀਵਨ ਦੇ ਹੋਰ ਆਸਪੈਕਟ ਵੀ ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਉਣਗੇ। ਅਤੇ ਭੈਣ ਜੀ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਕੌਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਪੇਪਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ 'ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆਖਰੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ, ਕਿ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅਸਥੈਟਿਕ ਸੈਂਸ ਆ, ਇਹ ਉਹਦੀ ਸੈਂਸੀਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਆ, ਉਹ ਉਹਦੇ ਅਸਥੈਟਿਕਸ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੁਐਸਟ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਟਰਾਂਸਫਾਰਮ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਦੀ ਅਸਥੈਟਿਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੁਐਸਟ ਆ ਉਹਦੀ ਅਸਥੈਟਿਕ ਸੈਂਸੀਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਬਣ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਰੈਸੀਪ੍ਰੋਕਲ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਇਨਸਾਈਟ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਆ, ਅਤੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਧਿਆਨ 'ਚ ਰੱਖਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਆ। ਇਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਰਦਾਰ ਗੁਰਚੇਤਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੋਣਾ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੋਣਾ ਦਾ ਥੰਡਰਿੰਗ ਡਾਨ ਇਹਨਾਂ 'ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਆ, ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਿਰਫ ਲਿਟਰੇਰੀ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਲਈ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ, ਬਲਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਸਿੱਖ ਭਾਵਨਾਵਾਂ ਵਾਲੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਆ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਲਈ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ, ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਸਿੱਖ ਫੀਲਿੰਗਸ ਵਾਲਾ, ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੀ ਫਕੀਰੀ ਕੁਐਸਟ ਵਾਲਾ ਬੰਦਾ ਜਦੋਂ ਬਾਹਰਲੇ ਕਲਚਰਲ ਸੰਸਾਰ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਦੀ ਇੰਟਰੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ, ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਉਹਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਲਿਟਰੇਰੀ ਐਕਸਪ੍ਰੈਸ਼ਨਸ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਦੇ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ, ਇਹ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਥੰਡਰਿੰਗ ਡਾਨ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਰਟੀਕਲ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਿਲਦਾ। ਸੋ ਗੁਰਚੇਤਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੋਣਾ ਨੇ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਟਾਕ ਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਕਈ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਸੀ, ਪਰ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਥੰਡਰਿੰਗ ਡਾਨ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਕਲੈਕਟਿਵ ਫਾਰਮ ਦੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕੀਤਾ, ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੀ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਦੇ ਨੁਕਤੇ ਤੋਂ। ਇਹ ਸਰਦਾਰ ਅਮਨਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੋਣਾ ਹੈ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਇੱਕ ਵੈਲ ਸਟਰਕਚਰਡ ਪੇਪਰ ਸੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ। ਤੋਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਹੋਈ ਆ, ਅੱਜ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਸਮੇਂ 'ਚ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਮੈਂ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਸਿੱਖ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਦਾ ਵਿਦਿਆਰਥੀ ਹਾਂ, ਤੋਂ ਸਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੀ ਪਰਿਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਆ ਉਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਰੀਜਨਲਾਈਜ਼ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕੀ ਆ, ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਇਹ ਰਿਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਟਡ ਜੀ ਫਾਰਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿੰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਇੱਕ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਕਾਲਰ ਕਹਿ ਲਓ ਜਾਂ ਕਵੀ ਕਹਿ ਲਓ, ਸਕਾਲਰ ਦੇ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਜੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਹੋਵੇ, ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਪਰਿਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਨਿਕਲਣ ਦੇ ਰਾਹ ਸਿਖਾਉਂਦਾ ਆ। ਅਮਨਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੋਣਾ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਅਖੀਰ ਕਨਕਲੂਜਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਲਿਆਂਦੀ, ਤੇ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਵਿਚਕਾਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਡਿਸਕਸ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ, ਯਾਨੀ ਉਹ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਨਾ ਓਪਨ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਆ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਅਨਸਟਰਕਚਰਡ ਆ, ਅਮੈਲਗਾਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਆ ਨਾ, ਜਾਂ ਨੌਨ ਕਨਵੈਨਸ਼ਨਲ, ਉਹਨੀ ਇਹ ਟਰਮ ਯੂਜ਼ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ, ਉਹ ਬੇਸਿਕਲੀ ਉਹਦੀ ਓਪਨਨੈਸ ਨੂੰ ਦਿਖਾਉਂਦੀਆਂ, ਉਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਨੈਗੇਟਿਵ ਸੈਂਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਟੈਂਪਰੇਰੀ ਏਜ ਆ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਭਾ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕੀ ਆ, ਤੇ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਨੂੰ ਰੀਜਨਲਾਈਜ਼ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨਵੀਆਂ ਪੈਦਾ ਹੋ ਰਹੀਆਂ, ਤੇ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਆਲੇ ਦੁਆਲੇ ਇੱਕ ਬਾਉਂਡਰੀਜ਼ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਹੋਣੀਆਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕੀਆਂ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਲੈਵਲ ਤੇ ਵੀ। ਯਾਨੀ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੈਰਾਨੀ ਜੀ ਵਾਲੀ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਆ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਹਫਤੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਕਿ 31 ਅਕਤੂਬਰ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਇਹ ਕੀ ਕੁਝ ਹੋਇਆ ਸੀ, ਹੈ ਨਾ। ਇਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਸਿਰਫ ਇੱਕ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਐਕਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ, ਉਹ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੀ ਪਰਿਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਐਕਟ ਆ, ਜਿਹਦੀਆਂ ਉਹ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਕੋਨੋਟੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਆ, ਇੱਕ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਇੰਪਲੀਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਨਿਕਲੀ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਿਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਿਕਲੀ ਸੀ। ਸੋ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਇਸ ਮੌਕੇ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਵੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਇਹ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਆ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਨਵੇਂ ਰਾਹ ਦੇ ਤੇ ਪਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਆ। ਸੋ ਹਾਲਾਂਕਿ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਇਹ ਕਸ਼ਮਕਸ਼ ਵੀ ਪੈਦਾ ਹੋ ਚੁੱਕੀ ਆ, ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਉਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਸ਼ਮਕਸ਼ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਇਹ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਭਗੀਰਥ ਬਾਰੇ ਗੱਲ ਹੋਈ ਆ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਤੇ ਦੈਨ ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਹੋਰ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗਸ ਆ, ਹਾਲਾਂਕਿ ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਸਪਿਰਿਟ ਆਫ ਦਾ ਸਿੱਖ ਆ, ਜਾਂ ਸਪਿਰਿਟ ਬੋਰਨ ਪੀਪਲ ਆ, ਹਨਾ, ਜਾਂ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਰਡਸਵਰਥ ਤੇ ਸ਼ੇਕਸਪੀਅਰ ਜਾਂ ਗੋਇਥੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਲਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖਦਾ, ਮੀਰਾਬਾਈ ਨੂੰ, ਸਾਰੇ ਭਗਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਨਾ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਭਗਤੀ ਟ੍ਰੈਡੀਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪ੍ਰੇਮ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਲਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖਦਾ। ਪਰ ਉਹਦਾ ਰਹੱਸਵਾਦੀ ਇਹ ਔਰਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦਾ, ਉਹ ਏਡਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਆ। ਲੇਕਿਨ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਹ ਆਇਡੈਂਟੀਟੀ ਦੀ ਪੋਲਿਟਿਕਸ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਇੱਕ ਟਕਰਾਅ ਤਣਾਅ ਪੈਦਾ ਬਣ ਰਿਹਾ, ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਦੇ ਵੀ ਇਸ਼ਾਰੇ ਆ, ਤੇ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਤਣਾਅ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਰੂਪ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਆ। ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਜੀਵਨ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆਖਰੀ ਜੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਲਿਖੀਆਂ, ਉਹਨੇ ਸਾਈਮਨ ਕਮਿਸ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਖਤ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਜਾਂ ਕੁਝ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਇਸ਼ਾਰੇ ਇਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਆ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਇੱਕ ਰਹੱਸਵਾਦੀ ਤਲਾਸ਼ ਆ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਨਵੀਆਂ ਅੰਤਰ ਦ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟੀਆਂ ਮਿਲਦੀਆਂ ਆ। ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਅਧਿਐਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਰਿਸਰਚਰ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਧਿਆਨ 'ਚ ਰੱਖਣੀਆਂ ਚਾਹੀਦੀਆਂ ਕਿ ਉਹਦੀ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਦੀ ਕਨਸੈਪਸ਼ਨ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ। ਮੈਂ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਪੋਇਮਸ ਦਾ ਪਾਠ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪਟਿਆਲਾ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀਆਂ ਛਾਪੀਆਂ ਸੀ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਾਈਟ ਬਾਰ-ਬਾਰ ਲਾਈਟ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ, ਲਗਭਗ ਉਹਦੀ ਹਰ ਪੋਇਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਾਈਟ ਨਾਲ, ਰੌਸ਼ਨੀ ਨਾਲ, ਹੈ ਨਾ ਕੁਝ ਜੁੜਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਚੀਜ਼, ਇਹ ਬਿੰਬ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਆ। ਉਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਇਸ ਪਾਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਦੇਖਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਆ, ਉਹ ਕੀ ਹੈ। ਜਿਵੇਂ ਭਾਈ ਵੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਬਣੀ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ, ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਾਈਟ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਲਿਓ ਸ਼ੱਕ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਕੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਜਾਏਗਾ। ਜਾਂ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਵ ਦਾ, ਫੀਲਿੰਗ ਦਾ ਤੇ ਇੰਸਪੀਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ, ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧੀਆ ਬਾਰ-ਬਾਰ ਰੈਪੀਟੇਟਿਵ ਇਹਦੀਆਂ ਟਰਮਸ ਆ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀਆਂ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਚਿੰਤਨਸ਼ੀਲ ਇਹ ਨੇਚਰ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਵੇਂ ਕਨਸੈਪਚੁਅਲਾਈਜ਼ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗਸ ਦੇ ਆਧਾਰ ਤੇ। ਹਾਲਾਂਕਿ ਮੁੱਢਲੇ ਲੈਵਲ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਸੰਕਲਪਕ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੇ ਡਿਸਕ੍ਰਿਪਟਿਵ ਪੱਧਰ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਫਰਦਰ ਦੀਆਂ ਫਿਲੋਸੋਫੀਕਲ ਅੰਡਰਪਿਨਿੰਗਸ ਆ ਉਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਗੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਐਕਸਪਲੋਰ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਪਰ ਇਹ ਕੰਮ ਹੋਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਆ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਪੂਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਜਸਵੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਆਹਲੂਵਾਲੀਆ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਗੁਰਭਗਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਤੱਕ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਇੱਕ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਪਰਿਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਦੀ ਵਿਆਖਿਆਕਾਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਥਿਓਰਾਈਜ਼ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਨਸਾਈਟ ਆਈ ਆ ਕਪੂਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਹਲੂਵਾਲੀਆ ਤੇ ਗੁਰਭਗਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਤੱਕ ਆਈ ਆ। ਅਸਲ 'ਚ ਇਹਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੁੱਢਲਾ ਸੁਭਾਅ ਆ ਉਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਮਿਲਦਾ ਆ। ਸੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦਾ ਉਹਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਰਹੱਸਵਾਦੀ ਔਰਾ ਆ, ਉਹ ਇਨਸਾਈਟਸ ਹੀ ਐਡੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਲੈਵਲ ਤੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਵਾਈਡ ਕਰਦਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਲਈ ਸੌਖੀਆਂ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀਆਂ ਆ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਇਸ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜ਼ ਕੀਤਾ, ਮੈਂ ਨਾਥ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ USA ਦੀ ਟੀਮ ਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸੰਚਾਲਕ ਆ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਵਧਾਈ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕਰਦਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਮਹੱਤਵਪੂਰਨ ਰੋਲ ਨਿਭਾਏਗਾ। ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ, ਧੰਨਵਾਦ।
ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ ਸਰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ। ਅਜੋਕੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਮਹੱਤਤਾ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਸਰੋਤਿਆਂ ਲਈ ਹੋਰ ਸੌਖੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਸਮਝਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਮੈਂ ਗੁਜ਼ਾਰਿਸ਼ ਕਰਦੀ ਹਾਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਆਡੀਅנס ਤੇ ਸਰੋਤਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ, ਜੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਦਾ ਕੋਈ ਸਵਾਲ ਜਾਂ ਟਿੱਪਣੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਜਾਂ ਤੇ ਚੈਟ ਬਾਕਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਿਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਆਪਣਾ ਮਾਈਕ ਔਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਬੋਲ ਸਕਦੇ ਨੇ।
Hello, am I
Yes,
audible?
yes, you're audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a short comment. Uh, so, I just want to say that today's webinar, if we realize this webinar as an act of remembering the whole webinar and see remembering as an act of engaging with memory, we may call it as an act of interpretation. So, this interpretation is both shaped by memory and narrative, which I think leads us to identify Professor Puran Singh as personal identity, or as Paul Ricker would call it, narrative identity. So, as for Ricker, remembering is an interpretive act. Memory is never a simple retrieval of the past, but always mediated by narrative, language, and the ethical relation to truth. And there is also a book by Edith Weshod, which is An Ethics of Remembering, which I think put forward the question of moral implication. So while we remember someone, so in that act of remembering, so how we are obliged uh, towards uh, the ethics of remembering, like how we select the particular narrations, how we build up the story, and how we try to recreate the past. So if we try to realize this whole act of remembering as an act of interpretation, of interpreting Professor Puran Singh, um, and be sympathetic in that context, and uh, uh, So what I'm trying to say is that when we try to create narratives, so these narratives and memory is speaking about someone who is not present, and in that sense uh, I think there comes the ethical part. Yeah, I don't know whether it makes sense. Yeah, this is it.
It does make sense, Jaswinder. Thank you. Everybody, that was Jaswinder from Center for Comparative Religions and Civilizations, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. Thank you, Jaswinder. I don't see any other comment in the chat box, so we will just proceed with the last.
Just may
Yes, ma'am.
I put several comments on the chat box.
Okay,
And
my
it's for
bad, sorry.
everybody. So
I'll read.
yeah.
I'll read, ma'am. I'll read the comments. Okay, so the first one is thanks very much, Harjot. The description of Lahore in Bhagirath is one of the best I have read. Also, the humor in a few of the incidents, such as the chapter on the melon seller, is another new in the medley. That was insightful. Okay, next comment is for Gurchetan ji. Ma'am says, thanks very much, Gurchetan. It is wonderful to see your interest in Thundering Dawn. There is a breakdown of all barriers between the writer, the reader, and the environment. Thank you deeply. Okay, thank you. The next comment is for Amandeep Singh ji. Ma'am says, thanks, Amandeep. Puran Singh's mind was always racing and he wrote ceaselessly. That is why his work seems unstructured and an amalgamation. He wants us to approach them in the same way, intuitively and boundlessly. Thank you so much, ma'am. Um, Thank you again, Jaswinder Singh ji. This is an important part of a long journey for us. This was the comment for Jaswinder Singh ji. And then, yes, so thank you so much, ma'am, for these comments. These were very insightful. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਅਸੀਂ now we move on to the last stage or of our event and ਮੈਂ ਸੱਦਾ ਦਿਆਂਗੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਜਗਦੀਸ਼ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਆਫੀਸ਼ੀਅਲੀ ਨੋਟ ਆਫ ਥੈਂਕਸ ਦੇ ਕੇ ਇਸ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਸਮਾਗਮ ਨੂੰ ਕਨਕਲੂਡ ਕਰਨ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸਰ
ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ ਦੀ ਜੋ ਖਾਸੀਅਤ ਰਹੀ ਉਹ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੋ ਨਵੇਂ ਟੈਕਸਟ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਕਦੇ ਡਿਸਕਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਏ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਡਿਸਕਸ ਹੋਏ। ਇਸ ਨੁਕਤੇ ਤੋਂ ਇਹ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ ਦੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੀ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹਦਾ ਨੋਟਿਸ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆ ਉਹ ਨਾਦ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਲਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਨੀਲਾਂਬਰੀ ਜੀ ਦੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੀ ਅਨਾਇਤ ਰਹੀ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਟੈਕਸਟ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝੇ ਕੀਤੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਭਣ 'ਚ ਸਾਡੀ ਮਦਦ ਕੀਤੀ ਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਕੌਰ ਨੇ ਅਤੇ ਗੁਰਚੇਤਨ ਨੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੋਵਾਂ ਬੁੱਕਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਮਿਹਨਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਸਵਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਜਸਵਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਅਹਿਮ ਰੋਲ ਰਿਹਾ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਲਗਨ ਮਿਹਨਤ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਂਝੇ ਕੰਮ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਵਧਾਉਣ ਲਈ ਤਿਆਗ ਆ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਿਲ ਰਿਹਾ। ਸੋ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਤਾਬੀ ਸ਼ਕਲ ਦੇਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਚੰਗੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਚੰਗੀ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਕਲ ਸੂਰਤ ਅਖਤਿਆਰ ਕਰਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੁਖਵਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡਾ ਰੋਲ ਰਿਹਾ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਬੁੱਕਸ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਇਸ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਡਿਸਕਸ ਹੋਈਆਂ, ਇਸ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ ਦੀ ਇਹ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੀ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤੀ ਮੈਂ ਸਮਝਦਾ ਹਾਂ। ਦੂਜੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਭਾਈ ਵੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਮੈਡਮ ਕੋਮਲ ਕੌਰ ਡਾਂਗ ਜੀ ਅਤੇ ਬਲੌਸਮ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹਨ। ਉਹ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ ਦੀ ਖੂਬਸੂਰਤੀ ਨੂੰ ਵਧਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਨੀਲਾਂਬਰੀ ਕੇਈ ਜੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਰਿਪਰੈਜ਼ੈਂਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਵੱਡੇ ਬਜ਼ੁਰਗਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਪਰੰਪਰਾਵਾਂ ਦਾ ਜੀਵੰਤ ਰੂਪ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਰਹਿਣਾ, ਸੋ ਉਹਦੇ ਔਰੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਮਝ ਦਾ, ਐਨਾਲਿਸਿਸ ਦਾ, ਉਹਦੀ ਪਕੀਜ਼ਗੀ ਦੀ ਦਿਸ਼ਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਸਵੱਛ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ, ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਡਿਵਾਈਨ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ 'ਚ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹਨ। ਸੋ ਮੇਰਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਮ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਿ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜੀਨੀਅਸ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਟੇਲੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਪੱਖ ਤੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਡਾਇਵਰਸ ਫਾਰਮਸ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗ ਦੀਆਂ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਦਾ ਗਿਆਨ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਕਲਚਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਟਰਾਂਸਪੇਰੈਂਟਲੀ ਆਪਣੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਸੱਦਾ ਦੇ ਲੈਣਾ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਢਾਲ ਲੈਣਾ, ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜੀਨੀਅਸ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਟੇਲੈਂਟ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜੀਨੀਅਸ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਈ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਆ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਣ ਲਈ, ਸੋ ਟੇਲੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਂ ਗਿਣ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਹਿਤ ਰੂਪ ਕਵਿਤਾ, ਵਾਰਤਕ, ਨਾਵਲ, ਕਹਾਣੀ, ਐਸੇਜ਼ ਜਾਂ ਬਾਇਓਗ੍ਰਾਫੀ, ਐਨੈਕਡੋਟ, ਲੈਟਰਸ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ। ਇੰਝ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬ੍ਰਜ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ, ਸੰਸਕ੍ਰਿਤ, ਫਾਰਸੀ, ਹਿੰਦੀ, ਉਰਦੂ, ਇੰਗਲਿਸ਼, ਇਸ ਜਰਮਨ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਗਿਆਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗ ਨੂੰ ਫੀਡ ਕਰਦਾ ਆ। ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇੰਟਰਸਟ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰਲੀ ਫਲੂਇਡਿਟੀ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਦੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰਲੇ ਇਮੇਜਸ ਨੂੰ, ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਕਰੈਕਟਰਸ ਦੇ ਦਖਲ ਨੂੰ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਰੀਡਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਇੰਟਰਸਟ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਈਡ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆ ਉਹ ਕਰਦੀਆਂ ਹਨ। ਸੋ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਮ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਤਿੰਨ ਕੁ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਏਰੀਆਜ਼। ਇੱਕ ਰਿਲੀਜੀਅਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਦੂਜਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਐਸਥੈਟਿਕਸ 'ਚ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਤੀਜਾ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੇਖ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਦੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵਿਆਖਿਆ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਕਲੋਨੀਅਲ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਵਾਲੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਪੋਲਿਟੀ, ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਕੰਸਰਨਸ ਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਲਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੰਸਰਨਸ ਆ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਆ। ਐ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਪਰਸਨੈਲਿਟੀ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਵੱਡਾ ਪਸਾਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆ ਉਹ ਬਣਦਾ ਆ। ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਆ ਉਸ ਨੁਕਤੇ ਤੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਥੋੜ੍ਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਚਾਹਾਂਗਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਪੇਪਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਵੀ ਇਹੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਇਕੱਲੇ ਪੇਪਰ 'ਤੇ ਗੱਲ ਤਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ, ਪਰ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਦਿਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਪਈਆਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ, ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਐਕਸਪਲੋਰ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਗਈਆਂ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਨੇੜਤਾ 'ਚ ਜਾਣ ਲਈ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਲੱਗਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਰਸਪੈਕਟਿਵ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਦਾ ਤੱਤ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਦਾ ਫਲਸਫਾਨਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਨੁਭਵ ਬਣਦਾ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਦੀ ਦਿਸ਼ਾ ਬਣਦੀ ਆ, ਉਹਦੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੀ ਜੱਦੋਜਹਿਦ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਥੋੜ੍ਹਾ ਕਾਹਲੀ ਦੱਸਾਂਗਾ ਕਿ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਵੇਲੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਿੱਖ ਕਲਚਰ ਸੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਣਜੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਵੇਲੇ ਤੱਕ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਮਨਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਫਿਊਡਲਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਸੀ। ਇਹ ਜਸਬੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਆਹਲੂਵਾਲੀਆ ਨੇ ਵੀ, ਕਿਸ਼ਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੇ ਵੀ, ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਰਾਈਟਰਸ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਅੰਡਰਲਾਈਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਟਰਾਈਬਲ ਅਨਾਰਕੀ ਦਾ ਐਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਤੇ ਫਿਊਡਲਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਇਮੈਜੀਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਸੀ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੇ ਆਉਣ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਫਿਰ ਕਲੋਨੀਅਲ ਡਿਸਕੋਰਸ ਦੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਤਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਿਸ ਵਾਪਰਦਾ ਆ, ਤੇ ਉਹ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ ਏਸ਼ੀਆ 'ਚ ਹੀ ਵਾਪਰਦਾ। ਸਾਡੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਸੰਦਰਭ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੀ ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਵੱਖਰਤਾਵਾਂ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਕੀ ਕਹਾਂਗੇ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਦਿਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਵੀ ਹਨ। ਸੋ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਦੀ ਫਿਰ ਇੱਥੇ ਰਿਫਾਰਮਿਸਟ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟਸ ਪੈਦਾ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਰਿਫਾਰਮਿਸਟ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟਸ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਆ ਉਹ ਕਲੋਨੀਅਲ ਕੰਸਟਰਕਸ਼ਨ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ ਦੇ ਆਧਾਰ ਤੇ, ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜ ਦੇ ਆਧਾਰ ਤੇ ਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਕਲਚਰ ਏਸ਼ੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਟਰਕਚਰ ਪੈਦਾ ਕਰਦੀ ਆ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਦੀ ਫਿਰ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਰਿਲੀਜਨਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਿਫਾਰਮਿਸਟ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟਸ ਪੈਦਾ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅੰਤਰ ਤਣਾਅ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਜ਼ਾਹਰ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ। ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੈਕੂਲਰ ਰੈਲਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਨੈਸ਼ਨਲਿਸਟਿਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਰਸਪੈਕਟਿਵ ਆ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਬਣ ਰਿਹਾ ਆ। ਸੋ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਰਿਫਾਰਮਿਸਟ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟਸ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੈਜੋਰਿਟੀ ਗਰੁੱਪਸ ਆ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਡੀਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ, ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਆ, ਤੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਮਿਨੋਰਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਪੇਸ਼ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਆ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਬੈਕਗਰਾਊਂਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਪੈਦਾ ਹੋ ਰਹੀਆਂ। ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ 1917 ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਰਸ਼ੀਆ ਦੇ ਇਨਕਲਾਬ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਲਿਟਰੇਚਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਥਾਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਸੋਸ਼ੋ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਸਿਸਟਮਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਾਰਕਸਵਾਦ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਥਾਂ ਬਣਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਟਸਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਕੀ ਕਰਦਾ ਆ, ਇਹ ਉਹਦੀ ਜੀਨੀਅਸ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਦਿਸ਼ਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਫਲਸਫਾਨਾ ਆਧਾਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਦਿਸ਼ਾ ਪ੍ਰਦਾਨ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਐਕਸਪਲੋਰ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਲੀ ਦਿਸ਼ਾ ਬਣਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਨਿਸ਼ਚਿਤ ਹੀ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਅਮਨਦੀਪ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਪੇਪਰ 'ਚ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਕਲੋਨੀਅਲ ਕੰਸਟਰਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਰੱਦ ਕਰਦਾ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਨੂੰ, ਇਕੋਨਮੀ ਦੇ ਆਈਡੀਏ ਨੂੰ, ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਆਈਡੈਂਟਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਆਈਡੀਆਜ਼ ਨੂੰ, ਉਹ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਚੈਲੰਜ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਇੱਕ ਨਵਾਂ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਤੇ NGO ਸਿੰਘ ਸਭਾ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਪੂਰਾ ਸਹਿਮਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਉਹ ਸੁਧਾਰਕ ਨੈਤਿਕ ਆਦਰਸ਼ਾਂ ਦੀ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਰਹਿਮ ਭਰੀ ਤੇ ਥੋੜੀ ਸਲੌਤਾ ਵਾਲੀ ਦ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟੀ ਦੇ ਕੁਝ ਪਲ ਤਾਂ ਪ੍ਰਦਾਨ ਕਰਾਉਂਦਾ ਆ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੀ ਜਰਨੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਮੁਫੀਦ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇਖਦਾ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਲੋਨੀਅਲ ਕੰਸਟਰਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਦੀ ਆਪਣੀਆਂ ਸਥਾਨਕਤਾਵਾਂ, ਆਪਣੇ ਪੋਪੂਲਰ ਕਲਚਰ ਦੇ ਰੁਝਾਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਸੁਧਾਰਕ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟ, ਜੋ ਕਿ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਰੈਲੇਵੈਂਟ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਕਿਸੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਮਨੁੱਖੀ ਸੁਰਤ ਦੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਭੇਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਗਾਉਣ ਤੇ ਮਨੁੱਖ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਫਰੀਡਮ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਦੀ ਰੂਹ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਚਾਨਣ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਦੀ ਸਪਿਰਿਟ ਦੀ ਬੁਲੰਦੀ ਆ, ਉਹਦੇ ਲਈ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਉਹਦੇ ਆਧਾਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੁਕੰਮਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੰਨਦਾ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਪਈ ਹੋਈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਖਾਸ ਕਰ ਭਗੀਰਥ ਨਾਵਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਬਹੁਤ ਪੇਸ਼ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਦੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਰਾਜਨੀਤਿਕ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਲਾਹੌਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਕੀ ਵਾਪਰ ਰਿਹਾ, ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਇੰਡੀਵਿਜੂਅਲ ਦੇ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਿਸ ਕਿੰਝ ਵਾਪਰਦੇ ਆ, ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਟੈਲੈਂਟਡ ਪੀਪਲ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਮੋਰਲ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਿਸ ਕੀ ਵਾਪਰਦੇ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਐਥਿਕਸ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਉਹ ਵੈਲਿਊ ਸਿਸਟਮਸ ਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਆ, ਉਹ ਕਿਹੜੇ ਐਕਸਪੈਰੀਮੈਂਟਸ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਿ ਡਿਜ਼ਾਇਰ ਦੀ ਭਟਕਣਾ ਨੂੰ ਹੀ ਸਾਬਿਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡਾ ਪਸਾਰ ਉਹਨੇ ਭਗੀਰਥ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕੀਤਾ। ਸੋ ਉਂਝ ਭਗੀਰਥ ਨਾਵਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਬੇਸਿਕਲੀ ਸੇਂਟਲੀ ਟੱਚ ਨੂੰ ਐਸਟੈਬਲਿਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਆ। ਉਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫੋਕ ਦੀ ਇਨੋਸੈਂਸ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ, ਲਾਹੌਰ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਆਈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਨੈਤਿਕ ਗਿਰਾਵਟ ਆ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਰਾਜਨੀਤਿਕ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟ ਚਲਾ ਰਹੇ ਲੋਕ ਹਨ, ਪ੍ਰੈਸ ਹੈ, ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਅੰਦਰਲੀ ਮਲੀਨਤਾ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਾਹਰ ਕਰਦਾ, ਟੁੱਟ ਭੱਜ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਾਹਰ ਕਰਦਾ, ਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਦੋਗਲੀ ਬਿਰਤੀ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਰਾਹ ਆ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜ਼ਾਹਰ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਵੱਡਾ ਸਟਰਕਚਰ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਣਾਉਂਦਾ, ਪਰ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਸੇਂਟ ਦੀ ਟੱਚ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਦੀ ਹੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਤਲਾਸ਼ ਕਰਦਾ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਟੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜੇ ਲੈ ਮਿਜ਼ਰੇਬਲ ਦੀ ਟੱਚ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੇ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਸੇਂਟ ਦੀ ਟੱਚ ਨੂੰ ਹੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਪਸਾਰ ਦਿਖਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ ਉਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਨਾਵਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਉਹਨੂੰ ਨਾਲ ਰੱਖ ਕੇ ਜੇ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਇਹ ਕਾਫੀ ਇਹਦਾ ਪਸਾਰ ਚੰਗਾ ਖੁੱਲ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ। ਕੋਈ ਦੇਖ ਨਹੀਂ ਰਿਹਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ, ਕੋਈ ਮਾੜਾ ਮੋਟਾ ਦਿਖਾਓ ਵੀ। ਹੈਲੋ,
ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੈਮਰੇ ਔਨ ਨੇ ਸਰ ਜੀ।
ਅੱਛਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਮੈਂ ਇਕੱਲਾ ਹੀ ਬੋਲੀ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ।
ਅੱਛਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਜੀ ਨਹੀਂ।
ਅੱਛਾ, ਸੋ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅਮਨਦੀਪ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਤੇ ਗੁਰਚੇਤਨ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਪੇਪਰ 'ਚ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਨਾਮ ਰਸ ਦੀ ਵਿਸ਼ਵ ਵਿਆਪਕਤਾ ਦਾ ਮਾਡਲ ਲੱਭਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਨਾਮ ਰਸ ਦੀ ਟਰਾਂਸਪੇਰੈਂਸੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਫਿਰ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਕਲਚਰ ਦੇ ਚਿੰਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ, ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟਿਸਿਸ ਨੂੰ, ਭਾਸ਼ਾਵਾਂ ਨੂੰ, ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਮਿਸਟਿਕ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਐਂਸਿਸ ਨੂੰ, ਲਿਟਰੇਰੀ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਐਂਸਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਕਰਦਾ ਆ। ਪਰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਕਲੋਨੀਅਲਿਜ਼ਮ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵ ਹੇਠ ਜਾਂ ਧਰਮਾਂ ਦੀ ਉਹ ਵਿਆਖਿਆ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਪਿਰਿਟ ਨੂੰ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣਾਉਂਦੀ, ਉਹ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੈਤਿਕਤਾ ਦੇ ਆਧਾਰ ਤੇ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੰਟਰੋਲ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਯੱਖ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਭਾਵ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਠੰਡਾ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਚੇਤਨਾ ਨੂੰ, ਉਹ ਫਿਰ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਰਿਜੈਕਟ ਵੀ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ। ਤੇ ਪਰ ਆਪਣੀ ਨਾਮ ਟਰਾਂਸਪੇਰੈਂਸੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਉਂਦੀ, ਉਹ ਫਿਰ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਸੁਰਤ ਦਾ ਸੁਰਤ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਦਾ ਮਾਡਲ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਹਦੇ ਚ ਸੁਰਤ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਦੀ ਸੁਰਤ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰਮੁੱਖਤਾ, ਭਾਵ ਕਿ ਇੰਡੀਵਿਜੂਅਲ ਦੀ ਚੇਤਨਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਕਾਸਮਿਕ ਜਰਨੀ ਵੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਵੱਧ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਸੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਸਪਿਰਿਟ ਆਫ ਓਰੀਐਂਟਲ ਪੋਇਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਪੋਇਟਸ ਲੈਂਦਾ ਆ, ਉਹ ਲਿਟਰਰੀ ਸਟਰੀਮਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੈਂਦਾ ਜਾਂ ਉਹ ਕੋਈ ਲਿਟਰਰੀ ਫਾਰਮਸ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੈਂਦਾ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਲਿਨੀਅਰਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਮੈਂ ਕੁਝ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹ ਸੁਰਤ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਮੇਸੀ ਚ ਆ, ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਲਿਨੀਅਰਿਟੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਪਸਾਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਰੈਲਮਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਐਕਸਪਲੋਰ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਬਜਾਏ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਰਿਜੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਕੈਟੇਗਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਨੁਕਤਾ ਦੇਖਣ ਵਾਲਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਸੁਰਤ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਦੀ ਸੁਰਤ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਮੇਸੀ ਵਾਲਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਲਿਟਰੇਰੀ ਮਾਡਲ ਆ ਉਹ ਇੰਡੀਵਿਜੂਅਲ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਉਂ ਲੈਂਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਜੇ ਉਹਨੇ ਟੈਗੋਰ ਲਿਆ, ਫਿਰ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹਨੇ ਇਕਬਾਲ ਲਿਆ, ਜਾਂ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਇਕੱਲੇ ਇਕੱਲੇ ਕਵੀ ਲੈਂਦਾ ਆ, ਇਹ ਲੈਣਾ ਇੱਕ ਵੱਡੀ ਗੱਲ ਵੀ ਹੈ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉੱਚੀ ਸੁਰਤ ਦੀ ਦੈਵੀ ਇਕੱਲਤਾ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਣਾ, ਇਹ ਉਹਦੀ ਸਬਜੈਕਟਿਵ ਜਰਨੀ ਦੇ ਜਾਂ ਚੇਤਨਾ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਂ ਆਤਮਾ ਨੂੰ ਐਕਸਪਲੋਰ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਬੜਾ ਫਰਟਾਈਲ ਤੇ ਬੜਾ ਵਾਜਬ ਦਿਸ਼ਾ ਆ। ਪਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਲੈਕਟਿਵ ਲਾਈਫ ਆ ਉਹ ਉਸ ਜਰਨੀ ਚੋਂ ਕੀ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਕਰਦੀ ਆ, ਜਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਅਨੁਭਵਾਂ ਦੀ ਪਾਰਟੀਸਪੇਸ਼ਨ ਉਹਦੇ ਚ ਕੀ ਹੈ, ਜਾਂ ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਭਟਕਣਾਵਾਂ, ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਥਕਾਨਾਂ, ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਮਜਬੂਰੀਆਂ, ਜਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ ਅਧੂਰੇਪਣਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਰਸਿਕਤਾ ਹੈ, ਉਹਦਾ ਸਪੇਸ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਬਣਦਾ ਆ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਸੁਰਤ ਦੀ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਵੱਲ ਮਾਰਚਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਦੇਖਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਆ ਕਿ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਰੈਲਮਸ ਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੀ ਵਰਟੀਕਲ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਟੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਕਰਦਾ ਆ। ਸੋ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਜਦੋਂ ਸੁਰਤ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਸੁਰਤ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੱਕ ਸਬਲਾਈਮ ਸੋਲ ਦੀ ਇੰਡੀਵਿਜੂਅਲ ਸਬਜੈਕਟਿਵ ਜਰਨੀ ਦੇ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਆਤਮਾ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ ਰੂਪ ਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਜ਼ਾਹਰ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ, ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਵਰਟੀਕਲ ਰੈਲਮਸ ਹਨ ਤੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਸਟੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਹਨ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਿਚਰ ਰਹੀ ਸੁਰਤ ਦਾ ਸਾਂਝਾ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਮਾਡਲ ਦਾ ਤਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆ ਉਹਦੇ ਚ ਉਹਦੀ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਕੁ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਇਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਦੇਖਣ ਵਾਲਾ ਆ। ਇਸੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਗਾਲਿਬ ਸਾਹਿਬ, ਸ਼ੇਕਸਪੀਅਰ, ਟਾਲਸਟਾਏ, ਟੈਗੋਰ, ਵਰਡਸਵਰਥ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹਾਰਡ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹ ਸੁਰਤ ਦੀ ਵਰਟੀਕਲ ਜਰਨੀ ਦੇ ਸਬਲਾਈਮ ਸੋਲੀਟਿਊਡ ਦੀ ਸਬਜੈਕਟਿਵਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ। ਉਹਦੇ ਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵਰਟੀਕੈਲਿਟੀ ਹੈ ਹੌਰੀਜ਼ੌਂਟੈਲਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਿਚਰ ਰਹੀ ਚੇਤਨਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਰੈਲਮਸ ਦੀ ਕੰਪਲੈਕਸਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਆ ਰਹੀ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਨੁਕਤਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੇਖਣ ਵਾਲਾ ਆ। ਇਸੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਦਸਮ ਗ੍ਰੰਥ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਐਸਥੈਟਿਕਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ। ਤੇ ਉਹ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੁਖਵਿੰਦਰ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਵੀ ਰੌਸ਼ਨੀ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, ਸੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਡਾਰਕਨੈਸ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਦਾ ਸਥਾਨ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਬਣਦਾ। ਸੋ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾਮ ਰਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਉਹਦੀ ਐਸਥੈਟਿਸਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਮਿਕਸਚਰ ਪਏ ਹੋਏ ਆ। ਸੋ ਐਸਥੈਟਿਸਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਾਡੀ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਤੇ ਕਿਤੇ ਬਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਸੈਂਸੂਅਸਨੈਸ ਦੇ ਪਸਾਰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਥੋੜਾ ਡਾਰਕਨੈਸ ਵੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਥੋੜਾ ਵੱਧਦੀ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਕੰਟਰੋਲਡ ਆ। ਉਹ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਪਸਾਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਦੇਖਣ ਵਾਲਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਸੁਰਤ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਮੇਸੀ ਦੇ ਪੋਇਟ ਹਨ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਚ ਨਾਮ ਟਰਾਂਸਪੇਰੈਂਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਿਸ਼ਵ ਵਿਆਪੀ ਬਣਾਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰਲੀ ਫਾਇਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਰੀਡਿੰਗ ਨੂੰ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਸੈਲੀਬ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਵਿਸ਼ਵ ਵਿਆਪੀ ਸੋਮਿਆਂ ਤੱਕ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੀ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤੀ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਚੇਤਨਾ ਦੇ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਰੈਲਮਸ ਆ ਤੇ ਉਹਦੀ ਵਰਟੀਕਲ ਜਰਨੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਸਟੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਆ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਚ ਡਾਰਕਨੈਸ ਦੀ ਬਿਊਟੀ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੋਣਾ ਆ। ਉਹ ਕਾਸਮਿਸਿਟੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ ਝੁਕਾਅ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿੰਜ ਹਨ ਤੇ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਨ, ਇਹ ਨੁਕਤਾ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਦੇਖਣ ਵਾਲਾ ਆ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਫਿਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਗੱਲ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਤੇ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਸੁਰਤ ਦੇ ਦਾਇਰੇ 'ਚ ਲਿਆਂਦਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਆ। ਸੋ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਸੁਰਤ ਤੇ ਸੁਰਤ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਦਾ ਫਰਕ ਮੈਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਅੰਡਰਲਾਈਨ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ। ਸੋ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦਾ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਿਸ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਆ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ ਵੱਲ ਤੇ ਅਸਥੈਟਿਕਸ ਵੱਲ ਦੋਵਾਂ ਵੱਲ ਬੜੇ ਤੰਦਰੁਸਤ ਤੇ ਜ਼ੋਰਾਵਰ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਖੁੱਲਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਆ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬੈਲੈਂਸ ਆ ਉਹ ਲੱਭਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਭਾਈ ਵੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸੋਮਾ ਬਣਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਆ। ਸੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਦਰ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਜੁੜੇ ਜਾਂ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਸੇਂਟਸ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਦੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਤਲਾਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਚੀਜ਼ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਦੇਹ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਵਾਪਰੀ, ਜਿਹਦੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਛੋਟੀ ਉਮਰ 'ਚ ਹੀ ਰੋਗ ਲੱਗਾ। ਸੋ ਰੋਗ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਬੇਸਿਕਲੀ ਇੱਕ ਅੰਦਰ ਵੱਡੇ ਦੋ ਸੰਸਾਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਸ਼ਮਕਸ਼ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਰੀਰ ਆ ਉਹ ਰਿੜਕਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ। ਇਸੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤੀਬਰਤਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਉਛਾਲਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਆਰਟ ਫਾਰਮ ਦੇ ਖੁੱਲੇ ਰੂਪ, ਉਹਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਦੋ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਮੇਨ ਆ, ਖੁੱਲਾਪਣ ਤੇ ਸਪਿਰਿਟ। ਸਪਿਰਿਟ ਲਫ਼ਜ਼ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਾਪਾਨ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ ਆ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉੱਥੇ ਓਕਾਗੁਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਨਗੂਚੀ ਨੇ ਸਪਿਰਿਟ ਦੇ ਨੁਕਤੇ ਤੋਂ ਕਾਫੀ ਲਿਖਿਆ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਸੋ ਮੇਰਾ ਮਤਲਬ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਦਿਸ਼ਾ ਵੱਲ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀਗਾ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਲੋਨੀਅਲ, ਟਰਾਈਬਲ, ਫਿਊਡਲ ਤੇ ਰਿਫਾਰਮਿਸਟ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਟਰਕਚਰ ਸੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵਿਆਖਿਆ ਤੋਂ ਮੁਕਤ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਅਨੁਭਵ ਦੀ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਲੱਭ ਰਿਹਾ, ਤੇ ਉਹਦਾ ਨਾਂ ਇਹ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਸੁਰਤ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਦੀ ਦਿਸ਼ਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰੱਖ ਰਿਹਾ ਸਿੱਖ ਗਿਆਨ ਮੀਮਾਂਸਕ ਰੂਪਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਦੀ। ਤੇ ਇਹਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਘਾਟਾ ਇਹ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹ ਸੁਰਤ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਸੁਰਤ ਦੀ ਡਿਮੈਂਸ਼ਨ ਨਾ ਖੁੱਲ ਸਕੀ ਤਾਂ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਇੱਕ ਗੈਪ ਰਹਿ ਗਿਆ, ਜਿਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਮਾਰਕਸਵਾਦ ਨੇ ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਲੀਨੀਅਰ ਕੰਸਰਨਸ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬੀਅਤ 'ਚ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੈਟ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ। ਸੋ ਪੰਜਾਬੀਅਤ 'ਚ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੈਟ ਕਰਨ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਸਤਾਨਾ ਕਵੀ ਕਹਿਤਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਗਿਆਨ ਮੀਮਾਂਸਕ ਆਧਾਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਫੁੱਲਿਆ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੇ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਪੇਪਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੇ ਤੀਜੇ ਪੇਪਰ 'ਚ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਫੁੱਲਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ। ਸੋ ਉਹਦੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਫਿਰ ਤੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀਅਤ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਪੂਰਾ ਗਿਆਨ ਸਟਰਕਚਰ ਨਾ ਆ ਸਕਿਆ, ਤੇ ਮਾਰਕਸਵਾਦ ਦੀ ਫੇਲੀਅਰ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੇ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਭਾ ਦੇ ਸੀਮਾ ਦੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਆਉਣ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਪੋਸਟ ਮਾਡਰਨਿਜ਼ਮ ਨਾਲ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਫਿਰ ਉਸੇ ਟਰਾਈਬਲ ਫਿਊਡਲ ਕੌਨਸ਼ੀਅਸਨੈਸ ਨੇ ਮਾਰਕਸਵਾਦ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਵਿਸ਼ਵ ਵਿਆਪੀ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਦਾ ਮਾਡਲ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਅਸਥੈਟਿਕਸ ਤੇ ਮਿਸਟਿਕ ਈਡੀਅਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਣੇ ਟਰਾਈਬਲਿਜ਼ਮ ਦੇ ਨੂੰ ਪਗਾਉਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਆਪਣਾ ਹੈਲਪਫੁਲ ਬਣਾ ਲਿਆ। ਸੋ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਪੇਟ ਲਿਆ। ਸੋ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਦੇ ਤੋਂ ਵੀ ਬਚਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਆ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਖਾਸ ਨੁਕਤਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆ ਸਮਝਣ ਵਾਲਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆ ਮਾਰਕਸਵਾਦ ਦੀ ਫੇਲੀਅਰ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਮਾਰਕਸਵਾਦ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਹੀ ਲਏ ਗਏ ਇੱਕ ਵਿਸ਼ਵ ਵਿਆਪੀ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਦੇ ਮਾਡਲ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਪੰਜਾਬੀਅਤ ਨਾਲ ਰੰਗਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਉਹਦਾ ਸਿੱਖ ਰਹੱਸਵਾਦੀ ਤੇ ਸੂਫੀ ਮਿਸਟੀਸਿਜ਼ਮ ਨਾਲ ਰੋਲ ਕੇ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਦਾ ਮਾਡਲ ਕੱਢਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਟਰਾਈਬਲ ਕੌਨਸ਼ੀਅਸਨੈਸ ਤੇ ਫਿਊਡਲ ਸਾਈਕੋਲੋਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਫੀਡ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਸਟ੍ਰੈਟਜਿਕ ਚੀਜ਼ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵਾਪਰ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਵਾਲੇ, ਇਹ ਦੇਖਣ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਆ। ਸੋ ਮੈਂ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਾਰਟਿਸਪੈਂਟਸ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਧਾਈ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਆ, ਤੇ ਸਭ ਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਬੋਲਿਆ ਸੀਗਾ
ਅਨਹਦਪਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ,
ਅਨਹਦਪਾਲ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਬੜੀ ਮਾਸੂਮ ਜੀ ਅਦਾ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਣਾ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ, ਆਪਣੀ ਕਵਿਤਾ ਦੀ ਰਿਸਾਈਟ ਵੀ ਕੀਤਾ, ਤੇ ਕੀਨੋਟ ਐਡਰੈਸ ਲਈ ਨੀਲਾਂਬਰੀ ਘਈ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਪੇਪਰ ਰੀਡਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਅਤੇ ਕਮੈਂਟਸ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੀਤੇ ਆ, ਤੇ ਕੋਮਲ ਕੌਰ ਡਾਂਗ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਬਲੌਸਮ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ, ਤੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਟੇਜ ਦਾ ਸੰਚਾਲਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਦਾ ਹਾਂ। ਤੇ ਉਮੀਦ ਕਰਦਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵੈਬੀਨਾਰ ਆ ਇਹ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਅੱਗੇ ਵਧਾਏਗਾ ਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦਾ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਐਸਟੈਬਲਿਸ਼ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਹੋਰ ਪ੍ਰੇਰਿਤ ਕਰੇਗਾ। ਧੰਨਵਾਦ।
ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ ਸਰ ਜੀ। ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫਿਰ ਤੋਂ ਗੁਜ਼ਾਰਿਸ਼ ਕਰਾਂਗੀ ਆਡੀਅנס ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਕੁਝ ਚਿਰ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਜੇ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਕੈਮਰਾਜ਼ ਔਨ ਕਰ ਲੈਣ ਤਾਂ ਜੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਪਿਕਚਰ ਲੈ ਸਕੀਏ। If possible and if convenient, please turn on your cameras for a few seconds. Thank you so much. Okay, everybody. Cheese. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining. Have a good day. Thank you.
ਚੀਜ਼ ਬਲਾਸਮ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਪੂਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਦੀ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੋਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿਤੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੋਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿਤੀ ਕੈਮਰਾ ਹੈ ਕਰਨਾ